Part 12. Everyone knows I'm a good man. Author, Tang Zhongmao. Chapter 111. The first free academy in Kuala finally announced the start of enrollment thanks to the efforts of all the county officials. On the first day of the academy's opening, Ji Changs came to the entrance of the academy with a glowing face and said some very inspiring words to the people who came after hearing the news. And standing next to him were several of his subordinates. These subordinates all have a common feature: thin hair, a slightly cool head, and dark circles under the eyes have become popular among them. But no one looked depressed. Instead, they were all full of energy and smiling. They stood next to their adults with their chests raised and their heads raised. Although they did not speak, their expressions and movements showed full of energy and pride. Can you not be proud? They have all become the first generation of teachers in the academy. This not only teaches people, but also means that they have become teachers for hundreds of people. Even if they retire in the future, there will still be hundreds of students who see them and bow to them as disciples. If there are any promising ones among them, it will be even more embarrassing for them. Top with gold. Everyone was very excited, and Wang Kaptu was the most excited one among them. He is a rough man. Although he has studied in school, he is not very educated compared to other people in the county government. He used to think that he was in the top position if he sat in the position of arresting the head. He no longer has the qualifications to go up. Very good. But today, he actually became MR. Even if he only teaches students the martial arts of horseback riding, archery, and kaju, Mr. G has said that he can help these students no less than other gentlemen. Literati don't like to move around, and always study in their rooms. Most of them are weak scholars, and they have a hard time in the imperial examination. Many scholars may not be unable to answer the questions, but their body bones cannot support them. They can't endure it before they finish answering the questions. I can regret leaving the examination room. The adults said that the Imperial College in the capital has courses specifically teaching students to exercise, but the gentlemen of the Imperial College also think it is good for the students. Wang Kaptu didn't have much knowledge. He was very happy when he heard that the Imperial College, where only officials and officials could enter, had a gentleman like him. How could he be so virtuous that he could get such an opportunity? At this moment, he was extremely grateful that he listened to the adults and honestly trained his subordinates according to the methods given by the adults. He also obeyed and trained when the adults asked him to train himself more. In fact, at that time, on the one hand, I admired adults, and on the other hand, I also went for the benefits that adults gave me. The adult said that he hoped that he could exercise his body well and become stronger and more capable. After he agreed, the adult bought a lot of eggs and chicken and had them delivered to his home that day, telling him to eat well and eat more. Only when you eat well can you grow strong. The children in his family are still young, and his wife is still pregnant with one. It is the time when she needs to eat these good things. In order to always have them, he gritted his teeth and trained himself according to the training methods given by adults. The first few days were naturally very difficult, but as I got used to it and felt myself becoming more and more powerful, and seeing the family members with rosy faces and happy eyes because they were eating well, Wang Kaptu admired and yearned for Ji Changs more and more. So Ji Changs likes to use Wang to catch his head the most. He has a lot of confidence in the county government. If you really think about it, almost the entire county government is his confidant. But because most of them are civil servants, literati have to be more open-minded, although they are also very easy to deceive, right? Easy to get along with, but occasionally I will wake up for a moment and question something in my heart. But Wang Kaptu is not like this at all. He did whatever he was asked to do, rain or shine, and his mantra became the adults say, and I listened to the adults. He never questioned whether Ji Chang's decision-making would be wrong. Now Ji Changs has no doubt that if danger suddenly appears at this moment, Wang the head catcher would definitely rather die than save him. Therefore, the Weeping Willow Man is really kind. He just gave Wang Cap to double holiday paid leave, and after knowing that the child in his wife's belly was not very safe, he wrote a post and invited a reputable doctor from the next county. I came to help stabilize the fetus, and later found that many of the family members in the county government had gone to the textile factory, and there was no one to take care of the children at home, so I set up a small kindergarten in the county government office. It doesn't cost much. It only costs a little money to buy a maid and let them cook and take care of the children. The kindergarten is located in the county government office, not far from the inner government office. The subordinates in the county government office can come at any time when they are tired from work. You can go see the kids. Of course, everyone wants to save face and won't delay too long. They all go back to work with peace of mind after taking a few glances. The girl's mother-in-law's prostitution contract is in Ji Chang's hands, and the fathers of these children are working in the county government. Even if they are given great courage, they dare not neglect these children. The children eat in the county government. Ji Chang's generous. Recently he has been conducting various experiments on raising chickens, ducks, fish, and pigs. He will not sell the chickens, ducks, fish, and pigs he raises. He will feed them directly to the county government and share the leftovers with his subordinates. It's really not much money, and it's just a drop in the bucket for Ji Chang's today. In modern times, these things are benefits that better units can have, but in Angwo, subordinates of all sizes have never enjoyed such benefits. They were all moved. They never dreamed that their boss could be so considerate and tolerant. Not only did he give them extra bonuses and provide them with various supplies, he even took care of their children, and he took care of them so well that the little ones all looked so happy. My face is white and rosy. I know how to wash my hands when I get home, and I don't like crying as much as before. What Ji Chang's did casually was a huge favor to these subordinates. Therefore, even if Mr. Ji likes to do this and that every day, and slips away after being given a plan by his own words, leaving the rest to them, they still enjoy it. Can you not enjoy it? It is natural for subordinates to do things. If you look at other county offices, even if they do more work, the Shangguan will only give you a few verbal praises. There is no one like Mr. Ji who can take care of all aspects. Of course, the most important thing is that although Mr. Ji left all the tedious things to them, he was only responsible for walking around his vegetable garden every day, eating melon seeds, listening to crosstalk, and going shopping with his wife, and giving prenatal education to his unborn children. But he doesn't take all the credit. Just like the previous Lantern Festival, although the general structure was proposed by Mr. Ji, the subordinates of the county government were responsible for its improvement and implementation. When their county government began to officially announce, there will be a Lantern Festival that night, and everyone who is doing something will come to participate. The only way they used it was to shout it all over the street or put up notices. The notice clearly states who wrote and planned the layout plan for participating in the Lantern Festival, the security plan for the Lantern Festival, the plan for where the Lantern Festival will be held, and the expenditure plan for the Lantern Festival. When I stood in front of the notice and looked at the plan I had worked so hard to write and signed my name, when I returned home, my family members said with a proud tone, "Today, my neighbor told me that the expenditure plan for the Lantern Festival was made by you, husband." When I said, "You did a great job," even Mr. G praised you. The pride in my heart cannot be described in words. That's why they were so willing to work hard for Ji Chang's. Even though they clearly knew that they could not always follow Mr. G, they still uncontrollably hoped in their hearts that they could always be Mr. G's subordinates. Without him, this respect and consideration could not be given by any other superior. Just like now, Master Guangrongji, who founded the academy, did not close himself to himself, but openly told everyone who had contributed and worked hard to open the academy. Ji Chang's long-term workers, crossed out, and subordinates stood at the back. Like Wang Baodu, Their eyes were filled with admiration as they looked ahead at Ji Chang's, who was speaking in an exciting tone. Ah, Lord Ji, the guiding light. Because the baby in her belly was getting bigger, she did not stand in a crowded place but chose to stand on the second floor of the library in the academy and look down. Wei Junkin did not miss the eyes of her husband's subordinates looking at her husband. She touched her belly, her eyes filled with deep admiration for her husband. The girl standing next to her also noticed this, and Ji Unsheng said to Wei Junkin, "Madam, look, everyone looks at me with admiration. He is really awesome." Wei Junkin said happily, "This is what a gentleman like my husband should be like. No, everyone in Weeping Lu now says that our master is a kind man. Not only has he done so much for Weeping Lu with his own money, he actually built an academy where students can study for free. I heard that there are many books in the library, and they are all free. Let the students see it. I heard that not only Weeping Willow, but also the capital is talking about our master." The girl also knew that Wei Junkin and Ji Chang's had a good relationship, so she specially picked some words to praise Ji Chang's from outside to make her happy. Wei Junkin admired her husband more and more in her heart, and looked at the person who was talking below with bright eyes. Only a husband can have such courage to seriously accept students without taking any money. She knew her husband was a good person before, but she didn't expect him to be such a kind person. "I was afraid that I would not have enough money to build the academy this time, so I proposed to use my dowry to make up for it, but my husband refused to agree. I still have some money for him here, and I don't know if he has enough money there." The girl said, "It should be enough. Don't be anxious, girl. Although the master is kind-hearted, he is not the kind of person who doesn't care about anything. Since he established the academy, he knows it well. The master also feels sorry for my wife. Please ask, and everyone in the world will know it. Hey, any man who cares about his wife would be willing to use his wife's dowry to replenish his family." Wei Junkin felt even more happy after what she said. Now she is in charge of family affairs. In Kawiliu County, as the county magistrate's wife, she is respected wherever she goes. She occasionally goes to the orphanage to teach orphans how to read and read. The children in her belly are growing safely. Her husband is always gentle to her. Never changed his attitude. Now she can't recall how uneasy she felt when she first learned about this marriage, and how worried and scared she was. She touched her belly again, her eyes full of tenderness. "No matter what, I will support my husband. Even if it means giving a dowry, it doesn't matter." She believes in her husband's sincerity towards her. Ji Chang's did not need a dowry from his wife. He hired a large number of people to build the academy because it was built quickly, but he didn't spend much money. After he finished speaking, he walked to the stone tablet standing at the entrance of the academy, cleared his throat, coughed a few times, and began to speak. The general meaning is that the establishment of this academy is not only the credit of our county government, but also the sponsorship of well-wishers in the private sector. In order to commemorate their commendable sponsorship and their spirit of not being the father of the sponsor, I specially sent people to build this stone tablet. Write their names. The academy is here and the stone tablet is there. Even if it takes another 100 years, as long as the academy does not collapse, the stone tablet will always stand here to record these good people and good deeds." The wealthy businessmen who had been waiting in the crowd immediately became excited. Ji Chang's lifted the red cloth, stood in front of the stone tablet, and read out the names on it one by one and what they had done to help. Some donated furniture, some donated pen and ink, some donated books, and some directly contributed. The people who were named stood up like the subordinates behind Ji Chang's with their chests raised and their heads raised. Feeling the admiring looks of the people around them, they were so happy that they went to heaven. Yes, this is Ji Chang's plan to increase revenue and reduce expenditure. The work of making money is still done, and naturally there are people who voluntarily pay for the money. After the academy was established, after deducting some random expenses and counting everyone's donations, there was still a lot left. All this money was put into scholarships by Ji Chang's, who was responsible for motivating students to work hard. Of course, he has never been greedy for credit. Whoever donated how much money and how many things were all written on the stone tablet. As for everyone who originally just wanted to donate a small amount, but found out that this stuff was clearly written out and started to compete with others to be more generous in trying to donate the most, that was not his fault. Ji Chang's couldn't let them spend their money in vain, otherwise it would appear how stingy he was, so he directly allocated a place for these merchants in his shopping street. Not only was the location good, but it was free for life. As long as Ji Chang's was still alive, Dashinja would never take their money. The merchants were very satisfied. They originally just wanted to spend money to buy reputation, but they did not expect such an unexpected blessing. Although the money for renting a shopping mall location is nothing to them, they can spend their whole life without spending money. Is it taking advantage? This is glory. It's Master Ji who gave them medals for their kindness. As expected of Mr. Ji, he is open-minded in doing things. Before, one or two of them thought that Mr. Ji would set them up by donating money and things this time. As soon as the incident on Dashin Street came out, no one thought so. If it was a trick, how could Mr. Ji pay for it himself? If you rent out the location in this big shopping mall, you can make a lot of money per day. Then, the academy's enrollment was finished today, and Ji Chang's found Wuxian Cheng the next day. Before Ji Chang's left, Wuxian Cheng was in his office. He had finished his work at the academy, and the previous travel reports and schedules had been completed long ago. Ji Chang's asked Wuxian Cheng to check where the fish was fatter and the meat was more tender. After checking it, he was greatly relieved now that he was sitting behind his desk. Now I can relax and relax well. He first took down a book from the bookshelf, intending to use this book to spend an idle but thoroughly enjoyable afternoon. After flipping through a few pages, I still felt that it didn't look very good. It was not practical at all to talk about what these mountains, rivers, water, flowers, and plants were like. It was not as interesting as the 13 foods liked by weeping fish written by Mr. Ji. He put down the book and returned to the desk, intending to draw a picture and enjoy it. What should I draw? Let's draw the scenery outside the window. With a stroke of pen, I drew a big fat fish without realizing it. I also wrote in small and thoughtful words that when eating this kind of fish, you need to cut off the tail and head to make it more delicious. They mostly live in XXX places and like to eat XXX, etc. Wu Xiancheng, who was about to write about when these fish would become sexually mature and when their larvae would be old enough to be caught and eaten, suddenly woke up. He opened his eyes slightly, picked up the rice paper and looked at the vivid big fat fish on it. What is he doing? Fish is already a thing of the past, and now he should be leisurely resting, drinking tea, walking with birds and basking in the sun. Thinking about it, Wuxian Cheng quickly put down the rice paper, patted his face, stood by the window, and took a deep breath. Ah, this is the air of freedom, the air of no work, the air that makes people want to take a nap. After he finished breathing, he opened his eyes and planned to admire the orchids he planted outside. Hey, weeds are growing on the orchid grass. I will move into my own house later and try to use different methods to weed. Mr. G said that just fertilizing is not enough. The weeds in the ground will rob the crops of nutrients. If you want the crops to grow well, you still need to weed them. I need to find a way that won't hurt the crops and won't be too tiring. Even if you have nothing to do, you have nothing to do, so let's experiment first. Thinking about it, Wu Xiancheng carried the pot of orchids into his room, sat on a chair, stared at the weeds for a while, and suddenly let out a long sigh. I obviously don't want to work overtime. I was obviously complaining through gritted teeth before, and I never dreamed I would have to work overtime, so why am I still feeling a little uncomfortable now that I'm free? Ji Chang's pushed the door open and came in with a smile. Wuxian Cheng, there is a manuscript here that I need you to write. He was already prepared for Wu Xiancheng to sigh, and then he would persuade him, and then the other party would be willing to write the manuscript. However, as soon as Wu Xiancheng, who was watching the wilting weeds, heard Shangwen's words, he immediately sat upright and skillfully reached out to take paper in one hand and a pen in the other, dipped in ink, and was fully prepared in less than half a minute. "Sir, please tell me, I will write it now." Ji Chang's, who was already about to start beeping. He silently closed his mouth and looked at the Prime Minister of Wuxian, who was sitting across from him with an "I'm ready" expression on his face. He paused for a few seconds and then said, "Just write about a Weeping Willow magistrate who can't stand the poverty of Weeping Willow students. Therefore, we decided to open a free academy to benefit Weeping Willow students." The local wealthy households were moved and donated money and materials to help. Finally, with the joint efforts of the government and the people, an academy was built. After speaking briefly, he began to talk about the key points. "You must write down the fact that I promised these wealthy people who donated money and materials that they can use the Da Chang Street for life, and also write down the number of people connected to the Da Chang Street." The location used by these wealthy households was spontaneously named Shanren Street by Weeping Willow people. There are also rumors that if you go to Shanren Street, you can still feel the blessings that the wealthy households have received from doing good deeds. People feel refreshed, and if they go there, the probability of passing the scientific examination will be greatly increased. Wuxian Cheng, who was listening to Ji Chang's talking about himself and taking notes, started to take action when he heard this. He raised his head and looked at Ji Chang's. "Sir, is this really happening? Is this really what the people said? Then what if the official went there? Woolen cloth." Ji Chang's, "The common people haven't said this yet, but after you finish writing and disperse, they will naturally say this, just like that girl you enter. Well, you can also add those who are officials. We can't rule out the possibility that officials who have retired and returned to their hometowns will come to visit our Weeping Willow. Then, if those who are officials go to Shanren Street, they can still protect their descendants and let their descendants take advantage of it. Reward." Wuxian Cheng: "Sir, you are so stubborn." Although, fortunately, he had long been accustomed to the fact that "my boss is a bitch" and wrote it down very skillfully. After writing it down, Wuxian Cheng reflexively wanted to flatter his boss. "Sir, you are so witty. I felt sorry for you when you gave away the location of the store in the shopping mall before. Now if this story is published, it will definitely attract many people to the shopping street. How can we make up for this loss?" Ji Chang's waved his hand. Being polite and courteous is not considered witty. At most, it can only be said to be a good arrangement. Wuxian Cheng: "Is it well arranged?" He suddenly had a guess in his heart. Could it be that Mr. G didn't think of a story to make amends after giving away the shop on the shopping street, but that he thought of the story first, and then gave away the shop on the shopping street, so that he could finally make things right? Ji Chang saw Wu Xiancheng trying hard to look at him with his little eyes wide open and his mustache trembling, so he nodded, "Yes, that's what you think." Wu Xiancheng. He retracted his previous thoughts. Gaobi could no longer describe his master. After Ji Chang's finished speaking, he was still waiting for Wu Xiancheng to start. "Sir, how could you do this and this?" "Sir, these manuscripts are too complicated, let's discuss it." As a result, Wu Xiancheng was so calm after hearing his admission. Accepted. Not only did he accept it, he lowered his head very naturally, and while dipping his brush in ink, he asked, "Would you like to give a few examples and ask for some help to go to the shopping mall?" Ji Chang's nodded, "I have already found him. As soon as the manuscript is in place, they can start immediately." Wuxian Cheng: "Haha, I knew it. He started writing as soon as he started writing, because he had written the story of Miss Uenner before, and he was already very familiar with this kind of nonsense plot. If he had some divine help, he wrote 2 lines in a flash. Ji Chang's waited patiently for a full minute, but did not see Wu Xiancheng complain to him about the hard work. He went out quite lonely. Why did he feel like he was deprived of the joy of persuading his subordinates? Life is really lonely as snow. Everyone knows I'm a good man. Author, Tang Zhongmao. Chapter 112. Chapter 42. After Ji Chang's failed to get the pleasure of persuading people from Wu Xiancheng, he tentatively went to Master Liang again. I don't know what happened to these 2 subordinates, but they actually really love their work. Even more exaggerated than Wu Xiancheng, who worked overtime immediately after getting the work target, Chief Liang actually managed to create work even if there is no job. Up realm. When Ji Chang's went there, he was trying to solve the problem according to the calculation method he learned last time. When Ji Chang's asked, Master Liang raised his head and smiled, his face full of desire for knowledge. Students are about to enter school. Didn't Your Excellency say before that after admission, there will be a class placement test for students with basic knowledge? The official is trying. Here are the test questions. Sir, can you see how well you did on these questions? Ji Chang's took a few glances. After reading it, he expressed his sincere sympathy for these students who were about to enter school. It's enough to take the exam right after school started, and the test questions are so weird, it's a wonder they don't cry. Master Liang, who had no idea that Ji Chang's was slandering him from the bottom of his heart, happily shared his thoughts with Ji Chang's. Didn't you say last time that most of the students are young and don't know the heights of the world? When they first enter school, they should suppress their energy for the future. Instruction. The official thought that their enthusiasm would probably be suppressed a little after the exams were over. More than that, I think they should all be suppressed. Although he felt sympathy from the bottom of his heart, how could a subordinate not praise him for working so proactively? Ji Chang's patted Chief Liang on the shoulder, gave him high praise and encouragement, and also enjoyed the beauty of the future. Very good. Mr. Liang is really responsible. I can imagine that if you work so hard for the students, they will be very grateful to you. By the way, isn't the topic a bit too boring? Otherwise, I will do it myself. After the academy was built, more and more people donated money. It would not be good for you, Mr. Liang, to do all this alone. I thought I should lighten your burden. Chief Liang was still immersed in the excitement of becoming a gentleman for the first time. He looked even happier after hearing these words. He looked at Ji Chang's in surprise. Sir, are you finally planning to recruit a few more settlers? No, 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 that's what I think. Why don't you do this? When you have taught the students enough, you can divide the account book into small parts and give them to do the calculations. When they finish the calculations, you only need to check a little more. Just make a summary at once. This will not only save effort and time, but also train students' learning ability. It can also give you a break. By the way, it can also inform the outside world of how open and transparent our college's account books are. Of course, the most important thing is still, I don't want you to be tired. Ji Chang said very democratically, it doesn't matter if you think this idea is not good, I will listen to you. Master Liang was moved. He never expected that Mr. Ji would be so considerate of him and come up with such a good idea to kill 3 birds with 1 stone in order to prevent him from being tired. He nodded repeatedly, okay, this is of course a good idea. Thank you so much, sir, for being so considerate of me. Chief Liang walked up several floors in response to Ji Chang's gratitude, sighing countless times in his heart that it was lucky that he could meet such a good official like Mr. Ji. Seeing how grateful he was for coming up with such a good idea to share the pressure, and completely forgetting that it was Ji Chang's who had put all this pressure on him, Ji Chang smiled happily. Still a familiar recipe, still a familiar taste. Fortunately, okay, it seems that the only person in the county government, Wu County Chang, has mutated. Although Chief Liang seems to be slightly different from before, fortunately, the problem is not big. Feeling relieved, Ji Changs continued to check on his vegetable patch. I took a stroll and started writing letters to my father-in-law. Now it's time to get things done. Because of his rich experience, Ji Changs has not made any detours at all, everything is natural and smooth. Now that the academy has opened, he is now simply a godlike existence in the minds of the people of Weeping Willow. Although as ancient people they still regard the emperor as the sky in their minds, Ji Changs is already the sun in the sky. If something happens to Ji Changs at this time, the emperor will be the first to stop. And these students taught in the academy who can write articles, do calculations, know the law and understand the principles will also be the pens supporting Ji Changs. Now that I have no worries, I can go to the emperor to ask for rewards for the success I achieved during this period. He wrote a letter in his study. Ji Changs has created a lot of things, but what can impress the emperor must be related to the people's livelihood in the world. Chemical fertilizers are definitely possible. After all, food can obviously increase income after fertilizing. Generally speaking, the emperor who lacks nothing will have a vision that transcends everyone in the court and goes further. Some officials would not care if the people had enough to eat, but a normal emperor would. They know that the people are the foundation of the entire country. One person may not be able to impress them, but 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, 1 million can definitely do it. The chemical fertilizer developed by Ji Changs can save so many people as long as it is implemented nationwide. According to his observation, although His Majesty in front of him is old, he has no plans to be an old fool and is indeed a clear-minded person. Ming Jun, if you hand over the fertilizer, he will understand what kind of contribution Ji Changs has made to Angguo. Just this one thing was enough for Ji Changs to get the emperor's protection. As for the remaining items that require long-term verification and are used to make money, they will not be confiscated for the time being. After writing the letter, he handed the letter to his 32nd confidant and asked him to hurry up and deliver it to his father-in-law. Before leaving, he was already free and went to see the messenger in person. He earnestly held this subordinate with a rough appearance and a rough name, Luda. This letter is of great importance and concerns our entire Angguo. You must hand it to my father-in-law, and be careful on the way. Luda patted his chest, feeling a surge of pride in his heart. Your Excellency has so many things to do, so you have to go out to deliver it to him in person, which shows the importance of this letter, and how much your Excellency trusts and values you when you can hand such an important letter to yourself. The more he thought about it, the more excited he became. He wanted to swear to the sky that he would be able to deliver it safely. After several assurances, under the sight of Ji Changs, he mounted his horse and left Weeping Willow. Along the way, Luda followed the adult's instructions, rested when it was time to rest, and hurried when it was time to hurry, and finally reached Wei Mansion in the capital. Mr. Wei has been living a good life recently. First of all, the wife at home was in a better mood. She no longer sighed all the time like before. She would wake up suddenly even while sleeping, and then she would throw herself into his arms and cry, saying that she dreamed that her daughter was not having a good life. Ever since the news about Weeping Willow reached the capital and Jun Li came back from Weeping Willow, Madam has become more energetic day by day. She brings several girls with her when she goes in and out every day, and she smiles at everything she sees. Mr. Wei was not very clear about how his wife stole the show outside. He only knew that he finally didn't have to sleep well when he was suddenly woken up by his wife. He was on vacation today, and he was sitting in his study looking at Weeping Willow's travel introduction. He wanted to go and take a look, but because he was still an official and didn't have a long vacation, he had to give up. But thinking that such a Weeping Willow was built by his son-in-law, he felt happy again. Just when I was thinking about whether to go fishing after reading it, the boy came to report that there was a person outside who claimed to be Mr. Coelho and sent a message to see the master. Master Wei was slightly startled. "Where is the letter? Show it to me first." The young man wondered. The man said that my uncle ordered that no one except him and the master can handle this letter. He must wait until you see him in person. Master Wei was confused. What is written in this letter? He actually asked his son-in-law to inform the messenger like this. As expected of someone who had been watching the scene for a long time, many possibilities immediately flashed through his mind. Found Shangguanta NWU. What's wrong with the Weeping Willow? The son-in-law was mentally unstable and became a corrupt official, and now the incident is revealed? Or is there something wrong with the older girl? In short, he thought a lot but nothing was good. Mr. Wei, who was frightened even before he saw the person, turned a little paler than before and stood up quickly. Where is the person? I will go see him now. After receiving the letter from the messenger, he took a few deep breaths and made enough mental preparation before slowly opening it. After taking it apart, he first saw Ji Chang's greeting his father, and then saying that he had experimented with a recipe that might be useful. He didn't dare to delay, so he sent someone to deliver a letter to his father, and he breathed a sigh of relief. When I saw the uses of chemical fertilizers written at the bottom and how effective they were, the relaxation on my face turned into a look of disbelief. I read just a few lines of words over and over again to convince myself. Did you read it wrong? Then I saw that Ji Chang said that chemical fertilizers had been used in his experimental plot to ensure the authenticity. He also conducted experiments on soil from various places in Weeping Willow. He even asked some traveling merchants to bring soil from various places to ensure that the chemical fertilizers were applied to these soils. All can be used, but it is not clear whether all soil can be used. My son-in-law is just a small Weeping Willow County magistrate. When it is really impossible to collect soil from all over the country, his breathing became rapid. If, as the son-in-law said, such good things were used throughout the country, how many people could be saved from famine? Even if Ji Chang's was conservative in what he said above and only listed the names of the places where he had obtained soil, this is surprising enough. His first reaction was that this fertilizer must be dedicated to His Majesty. Obviously, Ji Chang's thought so too. He also wrote at the bottom that the recipe is here, and his father-in-law can have someone make it. The experiment will make sure that what I said is the truth and then be presented to His Majesty. He also wrote that if this recipe is effective, His Majesty may want to reward him. In addition to his achievements in Weeping Willow, the most likely possibility is to transfer him to the capital. However, he has just given a reward to Weeping Willow. Basically, there are still many things to do. I really feel uneasy about leaving at this moment. I hope my father-in-law can ask Your Majesty. If you really want to reward me, just give the credit to your father-in-law. He only hopes that he can manage the Weeping Willow well and dedicate it to Your Majesty. Taxes are several times or more than in previous years. Seeing this, Mr. Wei already felt that something was wrong. Why does the son-in-law speak so officially? He didn't act like this when he wrote letters before. When he touched the envelope, he discovered that there was another letter inside. When I took it out and looked at it, I found that the words and sentences in this letter were much more casual than the previous letter. The general meaning is, "Father-in-law, please remember to give another letter to His Majesty to read, so that he can take a good look at how loyal I am to Angwo, and that I don't want to leave Weeping Lu." On the one hand, it is indeed because Weeping Lu still has many things to do. On the other hand, my achievements are not enough to live happily in the capital. In Weeping Willow, I am the boss and everyone supports me. I will do whatever I say. But when I go to the capital, what I say will count for nothing. Others will definitely don't blame me. Even if His Majesty supports me, I'm afraid it won't be easy for me to do anything. Besides, my wife is pregnant. Even if the child is born, he will still be too young. I'm really worried, so I'll ask my father-in-law. Yeah. Master Wei looked at the letter and nodded with satisfaction. That's right, this is the son-in-law he knows. He suppressed the excitement in his heart and forced the expression on his face not to be so happy that others could see it at a glance. He coughed a few times and said to the messenger, I also have something to say to Nagasawa. You first take some rest in the mansion. He wanted to make sure the matter was settled before writing to his son-in-law. Things are going very well. After the fertilizer was made, Mr. Wei asked people to get soil and seeds that could mature quickly, and opened a small courtyard in the mansion. He lived in it and took care of it himself. According to what his son-in-law said, the experimental field was divided into 4 plots. One was without chemical fertilizers, one was with a small amount, one was with a normal amount, and one was with a large amount. Then he observed the growth of the same kind of seeds in the field. Potential. The results of the experiment came out quickly, and it was exactly what the son-in-law said in the letter. After letting the chicken be eaten to test the poison and observing the chicken for a few days, he found that it was still as lively as before. Master Wei was so excited that he sent the vegetables and chicken to the kitchen and made a stew of chicken and stir-fried vegetables. He ate the delicious chicken and vegetables one bite at a time, feeling the taste was completely the same as that of ordinary chicken and vegetables. He was so excited that he was even walking. In the afternoon of the same day, Mr. Wei went to the palace to ask for an audience with His Majesty, taking the letter with him. This emperor is indeed as Ji Chang's observed. He is a good emperor. Although he is not too smart, he is definitely not stupid. His sons have gradually grown up. He has neither engaged in raising gu to watch fights, he did not deliberately favor one over the other, but always maintained a balance between them, silently observing which son was suitable to sit on the throne. He doesn't like pleasure very much, but he won't wrong himself. He likes beauties, but he won't upset the balance of the harem. He goes to court conscientiously and has children with beauties. He has no merit but no faults. It can be said that it is a rather ordinary life for an emperor. But sitting in this position, who doesn't want to build a country, and who doesn't want to do something that can leave a name in history? In later generations, everyone will praise him when they mention him, but he is relatively sober and knows that he does not have the ability, so he does not bother anymore. But he doesn't have this ability, his officials do. After hearing the efficacy of this chemical fertilizer from Mr. Wei, the no longer young emperor stood up from his seat excitedly. Seriously. I dare not deceive your majesty. This is the fertilizer I made according to the recipe. Your majesty will know after you try it. So, after Mr. Wei personally farmed the land, the emperor also ordered people to open up a place in the harem. With excitement, he repeated what Mr. Wei had done before. Even after waiting for the vegetables to grow, he sent someone to bring a hen and let it eat the vegetables to see if it was poisonous. When he found that the chicken was fine, he immediately crossed the river and demolished the bridge and ordered the imperial kitchen to stew the old hen. Made exactly the same. Of course, as an emperor, he had one more step than Master Wei to test the eunuch's poison. After waiting to make sure that the eunuch was fine, he sat in front of the chicken soup and green vegetables, and finished eating this representative meal with full excitement. He can leave a meal in history that allows this generation to have a good harvest. The emperor had a rare good temper, and he respected Ji Chang's choice. Of course, it cannot be ruled out that what Ji Chang's expressed in this letter, I am loyal to His Majesty the Emperor and I am willing to die for His Majesty the Emperor. I stay in Weeping Willow because I want to manage this place well for His Majesty. The Emperor naturally did not expect that Ji Chang's was a chicken thief and wrote this specifically. He only felt that these were the words from the heart of this loyal minister. This letter was written by Ji Chang's to his father-in-law, and he also wrote some trivial matters at home in the front. The lady is pregnant and has more delicious food than before. I accompanied her to walk my father-in-law. I can rest assured that she will give birth to your grandson or granddaughter safely. Is there still enough yuan hu a pancake given to my mother-in-law last time? I am currently researching another scented soap. When I come up with it, I will give it to my mother-in-law first. I hope she will be happy to use it. The subordinates in the county government have been working very hard recently. Because the free academies opened are not enough, they have to support themselves. Their hair has been falling out recently. My son-in-law went to a famous doctor in the next county for help. Medicinal diet for hair care. Father-in-law, you have also worked hard for the court. Although your hair is still there, you can still take precautions. Here are the medicated diet recipes. You can try it and so on. There are so many trivial things, and the words are full of intimacy. It seems that it is written by his family to his family. If he knew that this letter would be delivered to me by his father-in-law, would he still write it like this? Therefore, the loyalty he expressed later must be true and not adulterated at all. Moreover, Ji Chang's obviously knew how much credit the chemical fertilizers had, but he was unwilling to take the credit for Weeping Willow, and even expressed the hope that he could give this credit to his father-in-law. Even his own father and son may not be able to make such concessions, but he can. When such a materialistic and corrupt official cannot be beaten no matter how hard he fights, such a loyal, sincere man who is nothing like the coquettish bitch outside suddenly appears. Differently pure and unpretentious, it was hard for the emperor not to be fond of this little magistrate. He asked someone to send Ji Chang's dossier and prepared to get to know him, a loyal hero, but when he saw that he was actually the second-class official, he frowned. Although he is the second-level crane worker, he is not sent to a small place like Weeping Willow to be a small county magistrate. Moreover, he is also the son-in-law of Yashi Zhongcheng. Although Wei Qing has always been upright and will not help relatives to establish relationships, but just because Ji Chang's is the second class, he cannot be the county magistrate in a place like Kowiliu. The emperor guessed that something was going on here and sent someone to investigate. What he wanted to find out, he found out quickly. This good subordinate who was sincere and loyal to him was actually deliberately transferred out of the capital and sent to a place like Weeping Willow. Everyone knows that a poor place cannot do much merit. Without merit, it is difficult to get promoted. Wei Qing himself is absolutely unwilling to help his son-in-law run H0 Yumi, and if Ji Chang's had not been able to do it at Weeping Willow, if you succeed, you may have to be a lowly official for the rest of your life. The emperor was angry. It doesn't matter that you all have your own little thoughts. I know that, and I don't want to argue with you, but you have to keep such a minister who is dedicated to me and can be useful to me and Angwo far away. Send him to a poor place far away, and he will be tortured to death. If it hadn't been for the fertilizer matter, I probably would never have known in this life that there was such a sincere, willing to work for the people, and full of practical ability. The more he thought about it, the angrier he became, and he found out that the reason why Ji Chang's became the Wei family's son-in-law was because his son chose a concubine. That woman didn't want the well-off young lady of the Wei family to marry into the royal family, so she actually did this. He planted a trick to force Miss Wei to marry Ji Chang's, while he replaced her and became the prince's concubine. The emperor became more and more angry. Since when did the royal family have to rely on the daughter of a courtier to control whomever they wanted to marry? He had a gloomy look on his face, wanting to speak out for his good minister who was dedicated to doing practical things, but he was hindered by his status as a father-in-law and could not say anything about his son's concubine. But it doesn't matter. The emperor said to the people below, "Go and tell the queen, I will go to her immediately." It was not easy for him to scold his father-in-law, but it was natural for the queen, as her mother-in-law, to scold him. If it weren't for the fact that this kind of thing was not easy to expose and the woman was pregnant, he would have wanted his son to deprive her of her position as concubine. He had such vicious thoughts before he left the cabinet. If he gave birth to a prince in the future, wouldn't he become even more arrogant? Although it can be seen from the letters that Ji Chang's and Miss Wei were deeply in love as husband and wife, the emperor still felt that he had been wronged because of his loyalty, sweet words. He remembered such a good minister in his heart. Don't want to leave Weeping Willow? It's simple, let him be the local magistrate, and Weeping Willow will be under his rule, perfect. So, the emperor did something. Not only did he tell Ji Chang's achievements in front of all the civil and military officials, but he also greatly boasted about his loyalty and patriotism. Not only did he directly promote Ji Chang's to the prefecture, he also promoted Master Wei, Ji Chang's father-in-law, on the spot. Got an official position. I have only heard of ministers requesting royal titles for their wives and mothers if they do well, but I have never heard of a son-in-law and father-in-law being promoted because of a good job. For a moment, almost everyone looked at Mr. Wei with envy. Why don't they have such a good son-in-law? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Everyone knows I'm a good man. Author, Tang Zhongmao. Chapter 113. I have always heard that a wife is more valuable than her husband and a mother is more valuable than her son. I have never heard of a man being more valuable than his son-in-law. Mr. Wei has not been promoted for a long time. He has real abilities, but the most indispensable thing in the court is capable people. He does not know how to please his boss, and he does not know how to study. What achievements he has made are even more noble. He never thought about showing off his merits. He was able to sit in his previous position because the emperor felt that although he was occasionally inflexible, he was still a pure minister. As for officials, the higher you go, the harder it is to get promoted. There are many people in the court like Mr. Wei who have not been promoted for a long time. As a result, today, he was promoted based on his son-in-law's achievements. At this moment, whether they have a good relationship with Mr. Wei, a bad relationship, or an average relationship, most of them are envious in their hearts. The promotion is one thing, and the other thing is that His Majesty looks like this now. It is obvious that he has Lord Wei's son-in-law in his heart. Otherwise, how could he be so kind and cheerful to receive such a great honor? Throughout the ages, no one could jump from the post of magistrate of Weeping Willow to the post of magistrate of Zhao. Although they all have the same knowledge, their grades are very different. This is equivalent to a primary school student jumping to university in one fell swoop. From a humble official, he truly became a person with full power in his hands. Although everyone under Yuzhao is quite poor, the prefect of Angguo is from the third rank. From the third rank, a position that many people could never reach in their lifetime, Ji Chang's was only in his early 20s and was already sitting in such a position. It would be a lie to say that the emperor did not trust him. Some people think that this is too much of a reward, but the emperor has already issued an edict. At this time, if you stand up and say, "Your Majesty, do you want to change the reward to a more suitable one, isn't that asking for death?" The imperial power of Angguo was supreme, and even the imperial censor only pointed the finger at the emperor when he was not very reliable. Although the person currently in office is not very powerful, he is definitely not a waste. In addition, Ji Chang's is really good at managing Weeping Willow. He is capable, and has made great contributions. His old father-in-law is still standing next to him. He is opposed at this time. In the future, this man will get up and be the first to attack them. Ever since, the matter was settled. The emperor was not too surprised. He also had his own little calculation. The fertilizer was presented by Ji Chang's. If nothing else happened, once the fertilizer was used throughout the country, the people would definitely be grateful. If he gives less rewards, it will inevitably make people feel that they are not doing enough. It's different if you give too much. If word gets out, People will definitely not say Your Majesty, you are too lavish, but Your Majesty saw chemical fertilizer because he thought that it can increase the harvest of food and save the people below from hunger. I was so happy that I awarded him a reward. This is a story that can be passed down through the ages. And he didn't just give the official position casually. He had read Ji Chang's files and knew what the other party's Yuan Huapani had done in Weeping Willow. He was indeed a good official who was dedicated to the people. Order. Feeling that his orders were very logical, the emperor began to arrange the promotion of fertilizers with satisfaction. He had no idea what kind of prosperity Ji Chang's would repay him in the future because of his thoughtful trust. No matter how noble Mr. Wei was, he was still happy to be promoted. He went home with his lips curled up, and refused Mrs. Wei's suggestion of holding a banquet to celebrate. He touched his beard with a little pride and said, "It's just that I was promoted to the imperial envoy. Doctor, I was promoted based on Nagasawa's merits, so I don't want to make it public. It is also our Wei family's destiny to rely on Nagasawa to get promoted. Everyone is envious of it. Master, look at which son-in-law in the capital can be as capable as our Nagasawa. Yuan Huipan made me stand out before, but now I also help the master get promoted. I don't know how many people hate Nagasawa for not being their son-in-law." Mrs. Wei felt quite proud. I also heard that the third prince's concubine made some mistakes, and she actually failed to reprimand the queen and got pregnant. It seems that she made a big mistake. Mr. Wei's eyebrows widened after hearing this, and then he said softly, "Don't say this again. After all, it is the royal family's business, and it is not ours to comment on." "I know, isn't this only said in front of the master?" Mrs. Wei personally helped Mr. Wei get out of the government, and her tone was full of relief. "It means Nagasawa is a sensible person. That's why I didn't believe her words. Instead, I wrote a letter to tell you and me that if it were anyone else, what she had arranged with words like that, no man can have any grudges in his heart." After Ji Chang's and Wei Junkin decided to get married, the girl who deliberately set out to do this was afraid that she wouldn't step on Wei Junkin hard enough, so she actually whispered in their son-in-law's ears that the accident at that time was all their family's fault. Junkin did this deliberately so that the third prince could see that he would marry into the royal family. If Nagasawa hadn't believed in Junkin, he would have guessed that this accident was also caused by this girl, and he would have specially written a letter to tell them to be careful. After all, although the other party has not become the third prince's main concubine as she wished, she has also become a side concubine. After all, she is a member of the royal family. If she wants to do something to the Wei family again, they'd better be on guard. Master Wei and Mrs. Wei are not afraid. Although this woman became the third prince's concubine, if the concubine murdered the family members of the court ministers, the royal family would be the first to dislike her if the incident came to light. Not afraid, but also disgusting. How important is the innocence of a daughter's family? As a woman herself, how could she not know? Their Junkin always behaves gently and never offends others, but she resorted to such vicious methods. Fortunately, she met a gentleman like Nagasawa. What if it were someone else? In fact, his wife is deeply scheming and wants to seduce the prince. How can any man not care in his heart? Now that she knows that she has failed, the queen is not happy. Even Lord Wei, who has always been generous and does not care about others, is very happy. Mrs. Wei said, "I don't know what her expression will be like when she sees our Junkin become the prefect's wife. Her husband is considerate and gentle to her, and the two of them play the piano in harmony. She wanted to harm us Junkin, but instead she succeeded. You have found such a good son-in-law for our Wei family, and now you have been promoted because of Nagasawa. That is, she is in the palace, otherwise I have to find a chance to see her face." That's right, she suddenly remembered something and asked Mr. Wei, "Now it's Nagasawa's own credit, and he shares it with the master. Will the Ji family do it?" "It doesn't matter. Master Wei thought earlier than Mrs. Wei, Nagaze is an only son, and the Wei family is a merchant. Even if he wants to ask for grace for them, there is nothing he can do. I think that when the decree comes, he will please give me the order. When the decree arrived, Ji Chang's began to ask for imperial orders without any surprise. When he was in Kowiliu, he also stopped exchanging letters with the Ji family. At that time, he asked his parents and elders if they would like to come and live in Kowiliu, but his family refused. On the one hand, everyone knew that Ji Chang's would not stay here for long and would have to move to another place when the time came. On the other hand, it was also because he did not want to leave a familiar place. They live a very good life now, and the Ji family also has an ancestral hall. Ji Chang's and his family can only be regarded as branches. In the past, although they could speak well, they were definitely not a center. But when he passed the Jinshi examination and became an official, the Ji family ancestral hall gradually took their branch as the leader. It was just a small clan, and if they could produce a Jinshi, it would be a big deal for them. They didn't care whether they were junior officials or not, and whether they could only be regarded as little shrimps in the court. The relatives of the Ji family live in a familiar home, and are supported by the neighboring tribesmen. Even the officials recognize them and know that there is an official in their family. They are not the kind of greedy ones, and now they are very satisfied. After Ji Chang's knew that they were not willing to run around, he thought so. At this time, Ji's parents were already middle-aged and elderly, although they were only in their early 40s, and with the grandparents above, they were tired from traveling and traveling. Their bodies may not be able to hold on. He could only write a letter saying that if he was recruited to the capital again, he probably wouldn't be transferred again. At that time, he would buy a big house and take all his elders to live there. Anyway, counting the days, in about 3 years he can be called to the capital. It's like a promotion game. Ji Chang's first served as a small magistrate. When his superiors, the emperor, found out that he had done a good job as a magistrate and had some special contributions, he could be promoted to a magistrate. When the prefect also made achievements, the emperor would naturally call him back to the capital. After finishing writing, Ji Chang's turned around and wrote this good news letter to his parents and relatives before taking office. Of course, he was not polite. He wrote a report and approved a note, hoping to take his subordinates to the prefecture. He had to take them with him. These subordinates were carefully trained and taught by him. Each one was full of skill points. As long as Ji Chang's wanted to do something, they could start working immediately. Simply put, he thinks it and they do it pretty well. How could Ji Chang's throw away such a good subordinate? After going to the state capital, he had to train and teach his new subordinates again. He had to watch them learn many things that his subordinates knew now. Besides, Ji Chang's, who is the only one in heaven and earth who is proficient in all kinds of martial arts, can't say that there are no good subordinates that they can't do, and leave them to others. How can it be? He sighed to his subordinates who were called over for a small meeting. After much thought, I still can't bear to leave you. I want to take you to the state capital with me. What about you? The subordinates, led by the 3 chief Orestes of the county magistrate, had mixed feelings. Logically speaking, if they go to the state capital, they will definitely get promoted. This is a good thing and they should be happy. But when he thought about how much his master could do things, he could make flowers out of a small weeping willow tree, and when he went to the state capital, he couldn't help but wonder. The key is that it doesn't matter if he goes to heaven, he still has to go with them. But I would be reluctant not to follow him. Although I have to do more work with Mr. G, the things I do are a little more complicated, and my hair falls out a little faster, but the benefits are indeed full. Nowadays, among them, none of them has their own fan team outside. Master G likes to ask them to do things, but every time he is done with it, he never takes credit for it. Instead, He tells everyone openly and openly, who did this thing. Yes, who did that thing. And so on. There and that, a few of them did it together. There has never been a shortage of money. Even since Mr. G took office, G Chang's 58 confidants have never had to buy rice, oil, or meat. They get red envelopes when they marry a wife, and they get red envelopes when a child is born. There are red envelopes for the full moon, and the child is in the county government kindergarten without anyone watching. Even if the child is sick or in pain, the county government will cover the medical expenses. Last time, a policeman broke his leg when he went to catch a thief. It was the doctor Mr. G sent for. When I was enjoying it before, I sighed every day that this place was good and that there was a good place. But when I thought that Mr. G was gone and we would no longer have this kind of treatment, I felt so unhappy. This is like a few social workers who were used to living a life of easy work but low wages. Suddenly one day a new boss arrived. The new boss paid them bonuses and salary increases out of his own pocket, and also paid them himself. I get benefits, and from time to time I will give out red envelopes and pat my chest. I promise that from now on, your children's schooling will be taken care of by me. As long as I am your boss, I will take care of you every day. Not only will I take care of you, I will also help you. If your wife wants to find an easy job with lots of money, I can even help your children find jobs after they graduate, and I will also give each of you a house. Although everyone felt that the work was hard, they all became happy after getting used to the hard work, and felt that such a small life was really comfortable. Suddenly one day, the rich boss wanted to change jobs to another company. He came over and told the social workers to come with me. The position there is higher than here, the salary is better than here, and it can be said that it will be more honorable. When we get there, we will still be superiors and subordinates, and I will still protect you. The social beasts are faced with two paths. 1. Stay, but because the boss is too capable, a lot of things are left here. Even if they stay, they will still work as hard as before, and they will not receive the various compensation benefits provided by the boss. 2nd, follow your boss and continue to enjoy the happy life of being protected by your boss. Is this still a choice? If you haven't experienced how happy it is to be covered, some people may still think it's good to stay, but they have experienced the benefits, the sense of accomplishment of signing your name after doing something, and the admiration of your family. You can't leave it behind at all, okay? Wuxian Cheng squinted his eyes and looked at Ji Chang's in front of him with the expression "I really can't bear to leave you," and felt that he had glimpsed the truth. Lord Ji, he must have expected such a day for a long time. It's so sinister. He snorted coldly in his heart, thinking that this might be Master Ji's third round of test, so he was the first to step forward and salute. "I am willing to accompany you to the state capital." Ji Chang's immediately gave him a gentle Shangguan smile and helped him up very close. "Okay, don't worry, Mr. Wu County, even though you are going to the state capital, what you are doing is not much different from what you are doing now. I believe in you, you will definitely do it well." "About the same as now? It seems to be acceptable, and I'm used to it anyway." Wu Xiancheng also showed a smile. "Thank you for your trust, I will do my best." Seeing the two of them being affectionate, the others became anxious. "Well, you Wu Xiancheng, you are such a thief, and we are still hesitant. You stood up and agreed so firmly, do you want to show off in front of the adults to suppress us?" They didn't care anymore and hurriedly stepped forward. "Sir, my subordinates are reluctant to leave you. Wherever the master goes, the subordinates will go. My subordinates are loyal to you. No matter where you go, you will follow me." Ji Chang's chuckled with satisfaction. Okay, with you here, I feel much more at ease." The previous prefect made no mistake and had been petitioning for retirement. "In order to show that you are a good minister and I can't bear to leave you," the emperor called back twice. This time was the third time. It just so happened that he wanted to find a good position for Ji Chang's. The book was right in front of me, so I simply approved it and asked Ji Chang's to take his place. As for why the timing was so coincidental, why Ji Chang's didn't go to deliver fertilizer before the gentleman handed over the third discount, but the other party wanted to retire, so he, a small official, ran to donate fertilizer. Only Ji Chang's himself could do this. No. If he were to tell me, he would probably say something like coincidences are all man-made with complete peace of mind. When new officials take office, they have to have a good battle of wits and courage with local dignitaries and old-timers in the Yamen. If they can win, they will have 3 fires when they take office. If they can't, they will either be ignored or regarded as mentally retarded. Ji Chang's is different. When others take office, they can at most bring a master. When he took office, he brought with him a bunch of subordinates who were loyal to him. Each of these subordinates is experienced in many battles, trained by Ji Chang's, versatile, trained by various strange tasks, and each one of them is loyal. Can you not be loyal? They saw it with their own eyes what will happen to those who oppose Master Ji. The Weeping Willow Heavenly group headed by Ji Chang's airborne and easily took the initiative. At this moment, the subordinate team members are still in a very good mood. After all, they are in a new environment and new work. Finally, they no longer have to endlessly write questions / write articles / eat chicken breasts. Life is still beautiful. Then, Ji Chang's did something crazy. He spent his own money to build roads between Weeping Willow and the state capital with cement. Weeping Willow is poor, but it is not far from the central state capital. It used to be a detour, but now Ji Chang's directly built a road according to the shortest distance. He was particularly proud and said to his subordinates, "In this way, it will be much more convenient for you to go back to Weeping Lu to do things." The words were filled with happiness of why am I so considerate? Subordinates. So, even though they have been promoted and become civil servants in the state government, they still have to do the work of Weeping Willows, right? No, it should be said that now we have to do the work of the state capital, and we have to do the work of the Weeping Willow. Seeing that his subordinates were all looking at him with dead eyes, Ji Chang's walked over one by one and patted their shoulders to encourage morale. Are you all very touched? I specially built the road for you. Nguo is a good boss, who else can he be? The subordinates are blind. Ji Chang's, although it is good to be prudent, sometimes you are too prudent. Come on, let's have a small meeting. The subordinates continued to be blind. Ji Chang's became excited as soon as he saw them like this. He dragged a few people into the study room with great interest and began to give an impassioned speech. No, his reflections. The general meaning is, do you think I want you to do the work of Weeping Willows before building roads? No, I am now the prefect and in charge of the entire state. Do I still lack a few subordinates? I brought you to the state capital because I don't trust anyone but you and let you continue working on the Weeping Willows. It's also because we made the Weeping Willows single-handedly. We worked together to turn the Weeping Willows into what they are now. Wu Xiancheng glanced at Ji Chang secretly, and whispered in his heart, "It's obviously your lord, you are talking, we will do it. If you leave it to others, even if I am relieved, you can't be relieved, right? And you have worked so hard to lay the foundation and sow the seeds, and they are about to bear fruit. Are you happy to let others pick the fruit at this time? This will definitely have no impact on me, and the Weeping Willows are under my control, but what about you? Not to mention anything else, just the academy. Now that you are gone, the academy no longer has a few teachers who can go to a few classes every week. For you, it means that you no longer go to class. For the students who are studying, they are not as knowledgeable." Wu Xiancheng stood up straight unconsciously, as he is good at arithmetic. Master Liang slightly raised his chin with a little expression of I really want to be proud but I have to be reserved, and he is highly skilled in martial arts. Wang Cap straightened his spine. "Sir, How much less do they need to learn? So, you say, Weeping Willow, is it necessary to go? The subordinates nodded slightly with a little pride. Ji Changs continued to ask, the affairs of the state capital are your duties. Should you also do the affairs of the state capital? This time everyone nodded a little slower. But one is his job, and the other is the peaches he has worked so hard to grow. It would be a pity to lose either one, so he grabs them with both hands. This logic seems to be correct. Wuxian Cheng could see that Ji Changs was tricking them again, but he was very happy to be tricked. But no, they worked so hard at Weeping Willow and laid so many foundations. How many brain cells did they spend and how much hair did they lose to establish the academy? When the big and small shopping streets decided to establish, I don't know if the plan came out. How many of them are selected by Mr. G? This is all hard work. Now that it's time to eat the fruit, how can we miss them? What's more, he is so talented and full of literary works that he is a blessing to the students. Every day, without Mr. G's advice, he sits down at his desk and writes questions. After Mr. G gives some advice, he takes the exam every 2 days. Every time he goes to physical education class outside, named after Ji Changs, when it comes to subjects that don't matter if he takes 10 minutes less, he will be very considerate and use fruit to exchange 10 minutes with Wang Kapta for his own class so that the students can lay a solid foundation. He was so kind, and if he left, the students wouldn't necessarily be too sad. As a good gentleman, do more things for the students. Wu Xiancheng was very proud of recalling the great achievements he had made before, and kept his mouth shut without exposing his superiors. The next day, the group returned to Weeping Willow in a less bumpy carriage. The first academy he went to, he looked at his students with great affection through the glass windows. Ah, they saw him. When class was over, Wu Xiancheng looked at the subject list. It was very good. The next class was physical education. He walked in with light steps, and after announcing that gentlemen like them from the county government would still teach, he took out a stack of papers with a little pride of I am such a good gentleman, you don't need to go outside yet. Come on, hand out my new test papers first, and then go to Mr. Wang's class after doing it for a while. Look, how many of these students welcomed him back, and some even cried with joy. Oh, he is such a good gentleman. Everyone knows I'm a good man. Author, Tang Zhongmao. Chapter 114. The emperor indeed valued Ji Changs very much. As soon as he saw this courtier who was sweet-talking and practical, he handed over the coupon for the royal decree for his wife and mother. He immediately approved it as quickly as possible, and even bought 2 and got 1 free. One gave a royal decree to Ji Chang's grandmother. When Wei Junkin was about to give birth, the decree was already on the way. When the child was able to open his eyes, lying in the cradle, being teased by Ji Changs with a rattle, and Wei Junkin, who was still in confinement, looked on with a smile, the will came. Even before when her husband became the prefect, Wei Junkin, who was born in an official family, knew that she would get the royal decree. But when the Holy Spirit's will really came and she was really the madam from now on, she still felt like she was dreaming. Surprise. Ji Chang smiled deliberately and made a mocking salute to her. I have met madam, congratulations. Wei Junkin was so amused by him that the sense of unreality in his heart disappeared a lot. Ji Chang said, although my father-in-law and mother-in-law must have known about this matter, in the end it is still solemn to inform you personally. I am afraid that my mother's death is coming soon. I will write a letter and send it to my family right away. You will also write a letter later, tell your father-in-law and mother-in-law so that they can feel at ease. Wei Junkin nodded and watched as her husband went out and asked someone to get pen and ink. After thinking about it for a while, I didn't know what to write. She never had children before, and although she respected her parents, she didn't know what they wanted her to be. Now that she is a first-time mother, Every time she hears her child's babbling voice, her heart softens. What I think most about is not how this child will get ahead when he grows up, or how he will be admitted to the imperial examination, but that he can live a peaceful life, not asking for wealth or power, as long as he lives a good life. Just be happy. Thinking back again, when she married her husband, her father and mother were all sad. At that time, she thought they were sorry for her because she got married in a daze. Now that she thinks about it, her parents may be worried that they don't know her husband well and are afraid that he will treat her badly. She is not good. I am afraid that she will not be able to adapt to a life that is worse than before. When I turned around, I saw that my son, who had grown fair and chubby in a short time since birth, with round elbows, was sleeping in the cradle under the soft and comfortable sunlight in the early morning. There was a girl embroidering tiger head shoes next to him. Keep on guard. When her mother gave birth to her younger brother, although she was young, she still remembered a bit of what her mother looked like during confinement. The mother could not see the wind, so the doors and windows were tightly closed for fear of letting in a trace of wind. I couldn't take a shower for fear of getting cold and my body would always stink. At that time, my mother wouldn't let my father enter the house because she was afraid that my father would see that scene. But now she is undergoing confinement. Because she uses glass windows, even if the windows are closed and the house is not ventilated, it will not prevent the sunlight from coming in. She is lying on a kong specially made by her husband. Although the weather is cold now, there is no ventilation under it. But it was extremely warm, because it was also hot in the house. Although I still didn't take a shower, I could still wipe myself down. Now I feel refreshed, my body has recovered, and I am in a good mood. The child has been very well behaved since he was born. Although he is drinking breast milk, the wet nurse and the girls will take care of him when he gets into trouble. Will personally help the child change diapers. This is how happiness is, slowly seeping into your heart bit by bit. Even if her husband does not become the magistrate, but is still the little weeping willow magistrate, she will still feel very happy. Wei Junkin smiled, dipped his pen in ink, and wrote on the paper, "Father and Mother." She wants to tell her father and mother that she is living a good life now. Even if her husband is now the prefect and is respected by the saints, he does not treat her lightly. On the contrary, if someone in the government invites her husband to go to a brothel, he has always been strictly refuse and never approach other women. When it comes to children, he never believes in holding grandchildren rather than children. He hugs them when they should, and teases them when they should. The children are very close to their husbands. Now that she is in confinement, her husband has not shared a room with her. At night, when the child cries, he will get up and comfort her himself. If there hadn't been that accident and they had followed her parents' original plan to find a husband with a similar family background for her, even if he was a good person, he probably wouldn't be as good as her husband. The girl who was guarding her little master accidentally looked up and saw her master writing a letter with a nice smile on his lips. She felt relieved too. When the master is in a good mood, their servants can live with peace of mind. She must take good care of the young master. The master has said that now she is about to get married. The master has told his wife that when she gets married, he will also give her the dowry allowed her to leave the government office. She has no father or mother, she sold herself here, but she was able to get the support of the government when she got married. How could she not shed tears of gratitude? After she gets married, she will return to the mansion and serve the master, wife, and young master for the rest of her life. Over there, Ji Changs went to the study to write down a letter and sent someone to deliver it to his hometown at high speed. The person who delivers the letter is also very familiar with the route, and he is very filial. Every time he comes up with something new or something delicious, drinkable, and fun, he will make a copy and send it to his hometown. Logically speaking, this is a private order, but the people below are trying their best to get this job, and even play guessing games, and only the winner can take it. There is no other reason, sir, you are so generous. It doesn't take long to send a letter once, and you can eat and drink at public expense along the way. When you come back, you will not only get gratitude from adults, but also get rewards. This kind of money must be looked down upon by Wuxian Cheng and others, but for these poor people with small salaries below, it is simply a windfall from heaven. Therefore, they wished that Mr. Ji would send a letter every day. Of course, Ji Chang's was not that exaggerated. At most, he would only send something to his hometown once a week, because every time the laborers rode around on horseback, he still felt uncomfortable, so he pulled the three subordinates and started a conversation. Should we do it? Express delivery small meeting. As for how the three people were frustrated and full of resentment, he just didn't see it. If he couldn't see it, it meant it didn't exist. It was quite perfect. After watching the person who delivered the letter leave, Ji Chang's returned to the house, rubbed his hands, and began to write a letter full of subtle flattery with a serious face. Yes, this letter is addressed to the emperor. Since becoming the emperor's confidant, self-proclaimed, he has given full play to his shameless spirit and added a lot of personal items to his greeting package. In fact, being an emperor is also a hard job. There are too many people under him, and everyone has to send out invitations at a fixed time. Because this is a tradition, and everyone has nothing new. Basically, it starts with a dry sentence, Your Majesty, Holy An, I send you greetings. The weather is good recently, and I will think of you. If the weather is bad, I will also think of you. Although I am far away in X, I have always been thinking about His Majesty Barabala in my heart. Stacks of foldables were all the same and nothing new. Except for the different handwriting and names, everything else was almost the same. The emperor couldn't see it even with 18 pairs of eyes. But what can be done? He is not a foolish king. The people below are thinking about him and specially greet him. How can he just leave it aside and ignore it and chill the hearts of his ministers? No way, just watch. Not only read it, but also reply one by one, I know, I saw it, I know your heart, the weather here is also good, dear, please pay attention to your health. Replying to one or two is okay, but replying to so many piles and not letting others do it for you is like a tiring and hard laborer. And every time he did these things, what the emperor looked forward to most was to see Ji Chang's greeting note. The text is humorous and the language is interesting. Occasionally, he will tell interesting local anecdotes, sometimes mixed with a few food recipes and very vivid descriptions of how delicious this thing is and how much happiness he will feel after eating it. Among the boring greetings, Ji Chang successfully stood out with his unique sweet words and became a breath of fresh air in the emperor's working life. Gradually, even though the emperor didn't know what Ji Chang's looked like, he had seen him before but didn't take it to heart at the time and had long forgotten it, Ji Chang's status in his heart was indeed becoming more and more important. If this was a favorability increasing game, Ji Chang's would probably hear the prompts the emperor's favorability increases by 3 and the emperor's favorability increases by 5 all the time in his ears. The emperor even couldn't wait to call Ji Chang's back to the capital during the Chinese New Year. Although he couldn't call him back to the capital to work, he could always come for a walk. Because Ji Chang's would occasionally mention how much he and his wife were in love, how gentle, considerate, generous, kind and excellent his wife was, and she took the initiative to help him share the pressure of the orphanage and so on. Although she was everyone's daughter, she had no arrogant. When he was appointed as the magistrate of Kawiliu County, the county government was extremely dilapidated, but she never complained. Instead, she secretly used her dowry to supplement the family income. It was precisely because he saw his wife, who was everyone's daughter, like this that he firmly decided to make money and improve the environment of Weeping Willow. This is why he built Yuanhua Pancreas, named after Yuanhua, because Yuanhua has always been famous in Weeping Willow. The purpose of showing off women, which he didn't know until Ji Chang's arrived, he felt that it was very appropriate to compare Yuan Hua to his perfect wife. Because of Ji Chang's all kinds of overt and covert praise, the emperor not only had a good impression of him and his wife, but also had a good impression of Master Wei, the person who taught such a good daughter. When it comes to educating his children, he can't compare to a minister. Before, he specially asked the queen to reprimand the third prince's concubine who dared to influence the royal selection. Who would have expected that after the reprimand, the third prince, who had been doting on the woman, immediately ignored her, and even threatened to ignore her to the end. Mean. It's not that the emperor didn't want to see his son neglecting that poisonous woman, but you were so sweet and sweet before, but you just turned your back immediately after being scolded by the queen. Not only were you cowardly, but you were also extremely irresponsible. Otherwise, the emperor is difficult to serve. If the son still dotes on that woman after the queen scolds her, he will only feel angry in his heart and wonder if the third son doesn't take them seriously and actually dares to like someone they hate. Now that people were obedient and instead of pampering, he was indifferent. He was angry again. He felt that this son used to be smart, but now he seemed smart but fierce, but he was too irresponsible. Is this still his son? In addition, he was able to pamper that poisonous woman for such a long time without seeing her true face, which shows that he has no understanding of people. He had added the son to the competition list for the throne before. Now it seems that he has no outstanding abilities, is too timid, and has bad eyesight. He can't even compare to the daughter raised by the Wei family. Go on, you are still competing for nothing, just stay here and be a prince from now on. The third prince naturally didn't know that his father had removed him from the throne competition list, but he could clearly feel that his father had become more and more cold towards him recently, and the eyes he looked at him no longer had the same expectations as before. Satisfy. And all of this started when the father asked his mother to scold his concubine. At that time, the father did not say the reason, but only sent a message to the queen to be reprimanded by her. However, the father never interfered in the harem, and he had no interest in their son's concubines. This was the first time that he took the initiative to be reprimanded by the queen. That woman must have done something to offend the emperor. Unfortunately, no matter how I asked her, she just cried and complained that she had never met His Majesty and had never done anything to offend His Majesty. The third prince has already recorded this debt on his concubine, so it is conceivable that her life will not be much easier. I'm afraid she was so depressed that she never imagined that she had tried so hard to marry the third prince even though her rival's innocence was ruined, but in the end, what she was given was a lifetime of indifference. Being confined inside the house, she could still hear the chatter of the little girls outside. I heard that there is a thing called a fire kong in the palace. It will be very cold tomorrow, but it will be too hot to lie on it. Your Majesty has already used it and ordered the Queen to make one too. Now every palace wants to. I want it, but I don't know if our Third Highness can have it. The Third Highness is the Queen's legitimate son, so it is natural that he should be so. Is this fire kong really so powerful? No, it seems that Mr. G, who was the former magistrate of Weeping Willow and is now the magistrate, got in. The same happened to Mr. G before. Why is this Mr. G so powerful? I heard from Little Box that his godfather's brother is here. His Majesty is accompanying him, and even though Lord G is out in public, your Majesty values him very much. Of course it should be taken seriously. Mr. G has given so many treasures to His Majesty. Let's not talk about it for now. Now that the sun has come out, I have to go and dry the bedding. She listened blankly to the people outside talking. She naturally knew who the former magistrate of Weeping Willow County was. Wei Junkin's husband was also a poor student she found casually. There are people around her who are married to such students. The poorer these men are, the more arrogant they are in their hearts. They look down on officials who marry them. Most of them think nothing of marrying their own daughter. It's not how much I should cherish her no matter how good she is, but she married me just because I am so good. Except for those who have their own means and scheming, most people who marry into a small official family cannot live a good life, because in addition to facing husbands who think they are talented, they also have to face country parents-in-law who may not be able to read or write. They are illiterate and regard their excellent sons as the most powerful people. They think that when a woman marries into their own family, she should be a cow or a horse. Even the woman's father should immediately pave the way for his son. If the daughter-in-law's family helps, they will be proud of it. Their son is very powerful. If he doesn't help, it's his daughter-in-law's fault. She had seen too much, so she wanted to marry into the royal family from the beginning, and become the imperial concubine. She was much better than others in terms of reputation. As for Wei Junkin, blame her for her bad luck. Who made her bump into his hand? Who made her so pushy? If Wei Junkin hadn't stolen her limelight, how could she have taken action? Wei Junkin should be allowed to marry such a person and spend his next life struggling in the swamp. But she can become the third prince's concubine. If the third prince ascends the throne in the future, she may also become the imperial concubine. But now, everything has changed. Logically speaking, one should believe that Wei Junkin was a slut. Ji Chang's, who treated her indifferently and was not outstanding in literary talent. Ji Chang's, who should have been a humble official in a small place like Weeping Willow all his life, suddenly became the prefect. With such a favor, Wei Junkin also had a royal title. But she, for some reason, failed to reprimand her, and even the third prince treated her indifferently. She was lying next to the door, unable to figure out why things turned out like this. Wei Junkin's husband is obviously a lowly businessman. He should love money and be arrogant. He should treat Wei Junkin coldly when the mountains are high and the emperor is far away and Wei Junkin's natal family cannot help him. But why? He is so good. She is unwilling to give in and does not believe that Wei Junkin can take advantage of all the good things in the world. Even if Ji Chang's is good to Wei Junkin, shouldn't his parents, who are businessmen and should have a shallow vision, pick on Wei Junkin and make arrangements to give Ji Chang's concubines to breed offspring after their son becomes the prefect? Concubinage. The gray-haired Grandpa Ji sat at the door, basking in the sun and squinting as the person in front of him spoke to him in a flattering manner. No, Mr. Ji is now the prefect. I heard that he still doesn't have any concubines. It would be a bit embarrassing to say this. Old lady, look, my granddaughter is 16 years old. She is beautiful and smart, and her appearance and temperament are beyond words. And I wholeheartedly admire Master Ji, you see. Grandpa Ji touched his beard and waved his hand. My patriarch does not accept concubines. He is very busy and has no time to marry a girl to the house. The visitor's expression froze, and he never thought that this could be the reason for the rejection. He wanted to say a few more words, but Grandpa Ji had already squinted his eyes and started to doze off while sitting. The servant waiting next to him hurriedly came forward. Mr. Ma, the old lady is getting older and more confused. She often sits like this. Recently he sat down and fell asleep. Why don't you come back another day? After all, the man didn't dare to wake Master Ji's grandfather, so he could only leave with regret. As soon as he left, Grandpa Ji immediately opened his eyes and snorted coldly. Nagasawa often sent letters and things, but he often told them what was going on in the audience. Now that he suddenly sat in a high position, there were countless people who were jealous and wanted to pull him down. There were many people in the government office staring at him. Yes, all are his confidants. He not only has to take care of the state capital, but also has to finish the things left behind by Weeping Willow. He is so busy every day, either lying down or sitting, that he hardly even has time to go back to the inner office. No more, those people below who wanted to drag him down were still looking for trouble for him, and wanted to give him women, to please his boss. How can he have time to deal with these women? His wife will not bother him because she has a good relationship with him and feels sorry for his busy schedule. She only wants to make him live a long life, but these women who serve others with sex will not thinking about it this way. If they were really allowed to enter the house, they would just want to squeeze him dry. Anyway, as long as they have grace, they don't care about his body. He was very distressed about this and refused many times. Fortunately, his wife didn't mind sacrificing her own image and acted out a tiger scene with him, which stopped the servants from thinking of giving the woman away. They were too busy to even think about it. It's time to think about how to please your boss. The old man was literate, and while he felt sorry for his grandson, who had so much trouble with the greater his rights and responsibilities, he directly rejected the people from his hometown who wanted to curry favor with his family and wanted to send women to their homes. Directly saying, "These women are like wolves and tigers, my grandson is so busy every day that he has no time to deal with them, it definitely won't work." Fortunately, he is older and has a higher seniority. Every time the other party wants to say it again, he just pretends to be confused or pretends to be asleep. It works every time. After pushing away another rotten peach blossom for his grandson, he stood up with satisfaction and asked the boy beside him, "Did Nagasawa send someone to deliver a letter today?" "We haven't entered the day yet, but counting the days, I'm afraid it will be these days." The servant carefully supported the senior old lady in the family and asked, "Where are you going, old lady?" "Just go and see your wife and see what she is doing." "The madam is making clothes for her great-grandson." She was older, but her eyesight was not bad, and she was sewing a small dress carefully. Grandpa G came and saw it, and laughed at her. "What are you doing with all this effort? Nagasawa Junkin and the others have many servants at hand. Can the child still lack clothes? What others do is not as good as what I, my great-grandmother, can do." Grandma G and Grandpa G have lived together all their lives, and she is not afraid of him. She speaks casually, "I used to be afraid that I wanted to go to Nagasawa but couldn't bear the pain on the road. Now Nagasawa sends people to deliver things and letters every 2 days. It's like he's still with us." While the two were talking, Ji's father came. Because Ji Chang's also gave him a supply channel for Yuanhua pancreas. Although it was small, Ji's father felt that his son had become a talented person and he was also proud of his career. Recently, he was walking like a tiger and a tiger. "When I saw my parents, I bowed to them first, and then casually mentioned that I was going to drink today, and it turned out that a man insisted on marrying his daughter to his son as a concubine." Grandpa G and Grandma G immediately became wary. "Did you refuse?" "Of course I declined." Ji's father answered very quickly. Seeing this, the second elder gave him a satisfied look. The three of them looked at each other and smiled, saying nothing. Today is also a day to work hard to protect Nagasawa from being squeezed dry. Everyone knows I'm a good man. Author, Tang Zhongmao. Chapter 115. Chapter 45. Not only Grandpa G and Grandma G's father are working hard to protect her, but G's mother, who went back to her parents' home to see the old man this morning, also said when she came back that some relatives in her parents' family wanted to make their daughter a concubine for their son. To put it bluntly, their family is from a business background, and they are not a very profitable family. Most of their relatives and friends work in the fields. For these people who may not even be able to fill their stomachs after a year of hard work. He said that if a girl in the family could be a concubine for Ji Chang's, who was an official, not only would she be famous, but she would also be able to win over the rest of the family. In addition, there are some wealthy people who want to get close to Mr. Ji, who has become the prefect. Originally, their thoughts were pretty good. Everyone knew that Ji Chang's was in the state capital. He only had his parents and grandparents at home, and the Ji family was just an ordinary merchant before Ji Chang's came into his own. He certainly didn't have much horizons. At this time, they came to visit him affectionately. Gave the family's daughter as a concubine, and then gave gold, silver, and jewelry, the family would definitely happily agree. Unexpectedly, the elders of the G family were all indifferent. Your daughter is beautiful, and the jewelry you gave her is worth a lot of money. It's so easy for them to reject all of them. My daughter is beautiful and fragrant. That's not good. Their parents are now valued by His Majesty. They are so busy working for the state capital that they don't even have time for a decent lady. What do you want to do by sending a stunning beauty here at this time? Do you want to ruin my Nagasawa's body? As for the rare treasures, maybe they would have been shocked before, but Ji Chang's has never been short of money since he opened the Yuanhua pancake factory, and he would send people to send things and money home from time to time. The Ji family at first, I was worried that the money came from improper sources, but I felt relieved when I saw a letter written by Ji Chang saying that he had earned it openly and that His Majesty also knew about it. After seeing too many good things, they naturally don't pay attention to these ordinary objects sent by others. There is still some anger in my heart at being looked down upon. Do you think my family is short of money? You want us to sell our son/grandson by sending you such a useless thing? That's right. After Ji Chang's brainwashed his family for a long time, in the eyes of the entire Ji family, taking concubines means losing money sooner or later, and giving gifts to others to please them means selling them out. No matter how you calculate it, it is their family that suffers, the family who gave away money. These people are really cruel. The family of four finished their meal happily, and the old lady ran outside and sat down again. Although he doesn't like those who want to give women to his grandson, he still likes other people who speak nicely, flatter him. After eating every day, he usually just sits at the door, and then the neighbors who are out for a walk gather around him and start praising him for having a good grandson in his family, how capable he is, and how filial he is to his elders. Just as he was talking, the person sent by Ji Chang's to deliver the letter arrived. He had come so often that he was already familiar with the Ji family. As soon as he saw him coming, the servant waiting on the old lady at the door happily reminded him, "Old lady, your lord's messenger is here again." The old man, who was listening comfortably to others praising his family, opened his eyes and stood up with a face full of joy. "My grandson has sent another letter." There was another burst of flattery all around, but before the messenger came forward to speak, there was another burst of gongs and drums. The person who came to deliver Jioming's decree to Grandma Ji and Mother Ji came, and Mrs. Jioming's clothes and jewelry, along with the Holy Spirit's decree of reward, walked majestically to the front of Ji's house. The old lady had never seen such a battle before, and was stunned at that time. The rest of the Ji family in the house were shocked by the movement and ran out. "What's going on? What's going on?" But Nagasawa sent someone again. The messenger knew what Mr. Ji had asked him to tell his family, so he immediately smiled and stepped forward to greet him. "Old madam, what a happy event! Your Majesty has invited me to give orders to the madam and MRSU too. She will be Mrs. Jioming in the future." Grandma Ji and Mother Ji both looked shocked. Since Ji Chang's became an official, they have also made up their mind on official knowledge, so they naturally know what the imperial edict is. Now, they are going to become Mrs. Jioming? Madam Jioming. In the past, even if they fantasized, they only dared to dream about the Lady of Absolution, but now, Nagasawa actually made them become the Lady of Jioming. Both of them could only think of the words Mrs. Jioming. Mother Ji was fine, but Grandma Ji was so happy that her hands were shaking. Following the messenger's prompts, they accepted the order and looked at the precious clothes of Madame Jioming that were delivered. Although they knew that these clothes could only be worn when meeting nobles or entering the palace, it was enough to make the two of them excited and careful. He stepped forward and touched her. The material was naturally good, but it was not so rare that they couldn't buy it. If they wanted it, Ji Changs would definitely be able to buy them a box of such material. But these are the clothes given by His Majesty. She became the wife of Jiaoming, and her rank was not low. In the future, even the magistrate of their county would bow to them when they saw them. Of course, the magistrate now was also polite to them. Forgive these two, they have worked hard all their lives. Apart from Ji Changs, the biggest official they have ever seen is the county magistrate. Grandma Ji touched and laughed, tears falling down her face. She circled the clothes tremblingly for several times and couldn't bear to stop. I can become MRS Jiaoming, and I can have this day, in this radius no other old lady in Chile is as lucky as me. It's all thanks to Nagasawa. She must have done a lot of good things in her previous life to have such a good grandchild. Ji's mother and Grandma Ji received His Majesty's imperial edict, and the news of their special orders spread quickly throughout the county. The Ji family once again had groups of people coming to celebrate, and it was very lively. The head of the Ji family came specifically to congratulate him, and at the same time expressed in a subtle way, although Nagasawa's good life now has brought glory to the whole family and even the whole clan, but he is not at home now. You must not take advantage of Nagasawa's power to do bad things, and don't accept too many gifts. I will also restrain the clan members. Although Nagasawa's official position outside is glorious, it is also hard work. We must not hold him back. The patriarch was originally worried that the Ji family would be a little unhappy if he said such cold water when the Ji family was full of joy. Unexpectedly, the Ji family hit it off with him. Although they were immersed in the happy news of having a baby in the family and getting a royal title, they had not forgotten that the kid from Nagasawa complained about the difficulty of being an official when he wrote back. The superiors above cannot offend and must be cured of, the superior who tried to make friends with him, the subordinates below have their own agendas, subordinates who were tossed around, he has so many things to do, but he can only do it himself. 3 people working overtime. I hope that his family can help him take care of the relationship in his hometown, and never accept gifts casually or agree to do what others ask him to do, etc. The Ji family members have different personalities, but they all have one thing in common, that is, they hurt Ji Changs to the core. Whatever he said, they would naturally treat it as an imperial edict. First, he expressed his gratitude to the clan leader, and then gave him the letter written by Ji Changs to the clan leader. Yes, Ji Changs also wrote a letter to the clan leader, telling him that he planned to buy some land for the clan and to set up a school. This is also a common practice. If a big shot emerges from the clan, he must give back to the clan. Ji Changs is not short of money, so doing these things is just a matter of convenience. What's more, he has pulled the people of the clan. When someone from the clan becomes an official in the future, they will be in an alliance by nature. Just like Lord Wei's family, some members of the clan were arrogant and insulted their fellow clan members, but the clan elders turned a blind eye. When Lord Wei got up, they tried every means to suppress them, which was rare. While the Ji family was overjoyed, they also tried hard not to hold Ji Changs back. Master Wei received a letter from his son-in-law. The letter very smoothly stated that the patriarch came specially to remind the parents and elders. After finishing school affairs, he stroked his beard and smiled in praise. This is the real way to open up a clan. Look at their Wei family, what's going on? He suddenly had an idea and wrote a poem to praise his son-in-law and the clan for their mutual help. This poem spread quickly, and most people who read it felt that it was inspired by Mr. Wei, but the head of the Wei family felt that the Wei family had been slapped hard in the face. Look at what is written here. It is written that when Ji Changs had not yet passed the exam, the clan specially collected some silver to give him when he went to the capital to take the exam. Later, after he passed the exam, they did not use his reputation to benefit. Instead, he specifically warned Ji Chang's parents and relatives not to hold him back, as he could be called a good clan in Angguo. Let's look at their Wei family clan. When Mr. Wei was young and the pillar of his family passed away, the clan not only did not help, but also turned a blind eye to someone in the clan who was bullying them. Later, when he was admitted to the imperial examination and became an official, they were afraid that he would gain power and take revenge, so they suppressed him several times. When Mr. Wei took a high position and clearly drew a clear line with the clan, there were still people in the clan who used his name to do evil outside. Later, Mr. Wei personally reported him to the Holy Lord. Is this a compliment to my son-in-law? This is using this incident to mock their Wei family clan. Mr. Wei has always had a clean reputation, but some people think he is too cruel for being so cruel to his own clan, and even personally sued the juniors who took advantage of his reputation. Now that this poem has come out, Ji Chang's generously repaid his family after helping him. Isn't everything that Mr. Wei did over there not a reward? It's just that the Ji family gave Ji Chang's candy, and Ji Chang's naturally reciprocated with honey. And the Wei family clan gave Mr. Wei honey. How could he rush to send honey? A small group of people saw that Mr. Wei was using the matter of his son-in-law to mock the Wei family, but no one stood up and said a word for the Wei family. What else to say? It's not like they didn't see what the Wei family did back then. Now Master Wei has been promoted, and his son-in-law Ji Chang's is in the heart of the emperor. Although the Wei family is a noble family, it is now the royal family. It doesn't matter if it is a noble family. Does it have any power? It's not His Majesty's decision. Since you have done something like suppressing, why should you be afraid of what others will say? When Ji Chang's knew about this, he took the letter to Wei Junkin to read. The couple secretly hid in the house and laughed for a long time. Wei Junkin, in particular, felt very angry. When she was a child, her father's official position was not very high. At that time, the Wei family suppressed her, her father was angry, and her mother secretly wiped away her tears. She remembered it clearly. Now that the skin covering the face of the Wei family is thrown away, it is really satisfying. Ji Chang's received another letter from the capital and said to Wei Junkin, "It's about the person who harmed you. She is not living a good life now. Do you want to read it?" Wei Junkin shook his head, held the child in his arms, and said with a smile, "I'll be fine as long as I live well." Speaking of which, she still wanted to thank that person. If it hadn't been for that calculation, she wouldn't have married such a good husband. Ji Chang's agreed, "It's true, the better off you are, the more torture it will be for her." She took such a big risk and pushed Wei Junkin, hoping to push him into the abyss. Now that she found that the place Wei Junkin fell into was actually heaven, it would be strange if she didn't feel aggrieved to death. He stepped forward, picked up the fat boy in Wei Junkin's arms and bumped him, "You brat, you are so fat from eating, and you are as round as a ball." There was a servant knocking on the door outside, saying that the Prime Minister of Wu County was here. Ji Chang's returned the child to Wei Junkin, opened the door and went out and asked, "How does his face look?" "Facial? Mr. Wu has a good face, as if he has something good to do." Looking at him, Mr. Wu's face is full of smiles. That should be the matter he had promised before. Ji Chang's patted his sleeves with a smile and strode forward. When he arrived at the study, he opened the door and walked in. "Master Wu is here just in time. I have a new task for you here." When he saw him coming in, Wuxian Cheng, whose face was full of joy and opened his mouth, was about to say, "Sir, I have completed the task you gave me, let's have a happy holiday." Ji Chang's Balabala, who firmly believed that if I arrange the holiday soon enough, you will not be able to catch up with me, assigned the new task and patted Wuxian Cheng on the shoulder. "You can do it. Those who are able will work harder. I believe in you." Wuxian Cheng. What else can I say? Blame me for being too good. The muttering in his heart suddenly disappeared when he learned the next day that Master Ji had sent Wan Kaptu to lead people to exterminate the pirates. Compared to working overtime and doing clerical work, pirates are really doing it. If you are not careful, your life may be lost. Fortunately, Mr. G didn't ask him to do this. Wuxian Cheng, who was immersed in a pile of paperwork, was secretly grateful. Sure enough, I am still happy working overtime. On the other end, Wang Captu was so excited after receiving this order, especially after Ji Chang's directly told him that this matter was approved by His Majesty. If he wins this time, he can recommend Wang Captu to the military attaché. People always want to climb up step by step, but most of the superior officials only focus on climbing up themselves and completely ignore the people below. Master Ji directly handed the ladder to him. How could he not be grateful? What's more, he had been thinking about exterminating pirates for a day or two. He and his brothers practiced arranging troops every day, sailing ships with swords, guns, sticks and water. Isn't it just for this day? A real man must dare to kill and fight. If he were asked to do a job like Mr. Wu, he wouldn't be able to do it. Sure enough, it's still fun to kill pirates. In the 176th year of Angguo's reign, the pirates in the waters of the state capital controlled by Ji Chang's were wiped out by the government. From then on, in addition to merchant ships, there were also many military ships flying the Angguo flag on the sea. At first, there were some pirates from other sea areas who did not believe in evil and tried to take over this territory, but every time they came, they died. Not only did the people disappear, but the ships were also snatched back by the murderous government. Ji Chang said that these ships were all pirates. Good thing, it can be recycled and reused. Later, no pirates dared to come to this area of the sea. The state capital under Ji Chang's jurisdiction also gradually became a commercial center because of the opening of sea lanes. New roads were made with cement everywhere on the road, making it easier and faster to transport goods. He was very measured. He had a special account book for almost everything he made. Every account was clearly recorded and handed over to the emperor. Ji Chang's had no intention of hiding that he had made a lot of money. Why should he hide the money he earned based on his ability? Not only did he not hide it, he also showed it directly to the emperor. Of course, the premise is that the money he gives to the national treasury is much more than his own net worth. Under such a premise, the emperor didn't think it was anything at all. Even if someone reported Ji Chang's to take advantage of the opportunity to make profits, the emperor retorted. What happened to profit making? Did he rob or steal? Is he harmful to the people? Did he keep the taxes as his own? Did he rob other people's fields? Did he have sex? He did make money, but it was all money he earned based on his own ability. Not only did he earn it himself, but he also brought the people to earn it with him. If you say he is a corrupt official, whose money did he take? Does having money make you a bad official? According to what you say, then everyone should stop opening shops and buy zhuangzi, and donate them. Aren't you good people? Don't you think it's a sin for Ji Iking to be rich? Please go and take a look, see how the lives of the people in the state capital under Ji Iking's management are nourishing, and see that the taxes paid there almost fill half of the national treasury. Ji Iking dares to show me his account book directly. I know where every penny of their family's money comes from and where it is used. Do you who are suing him dare? Do you dare to show me your family's account book and see where your family's money is used? He is a corrupt official, and he is also corrupt openly and openly. He makes money and builds roads, builds free schools, runs orphanages, and builds official ships to dedicate to the court. Can you do that? Can you do it? If you can't do it, don't push it. Complainant. Who can't do good things? The problem is, even if they want to do it, they can't make that much money. People who originally wanted to say that Ji Chang's was full of money and dealt with money every day did not dare to say anything. His Majesty said so, what else could they do? If they had said so, who knows whether His Majesty would have directly asked them to hand over all their family money. Everyone knows that money does not have a good reputation among literati. The noble literati always think that it smells like copper, but most people know that without the smell of copper, they will eat, drink, wear and whatever. The emperor just looks down on them. Ji Iking, who looks both serious and established at the same time, is pure and unpretentious. She makes no secret of her money. She especially likes to share with him how to make more money. Is that love of money? No. Ji Iking knew that only by making money and having a lot of money in the treasury can the people of Angwo live a good life and be better able to help the people when natural disasters come. He is the noblest and cleanest corrupt official. People. The emperor was holding back the words he wanted to praise Ji Chang's and wanted to talk to someone, but when he looked around, there was no one who told the truth. Now that the concubines have grown up sons, they are thinking about their sons instead of being with him, let alone the sons. The older they get, the more things they think about. I am afraid that if he praised Ji Iking to them today, tomorrow these people can all swarm to befriend Ji Iking, and it is even more impossible for the palace maids and eunuchs. How can he have a heart-to-heart talk with them? After thinking about it, the emperor was so frustrated that he simply sent someone to bring the youngest prince born by the queen. The third prince displeased the emperor because of his previous incident with his concubine, and kicked him out of the list of heirs. Later, he thought that the queen might not be able to raise children, and raised good children without any royal bearing. He did not care about the other children. He didn't like it anymore, so he simply asked someone to bring his youngest legitimate son to him and raise him, trying to practice the trumpet after he lost the big one. But thinking this way, the youngest prince in the emperor's heart must not be able to sit on the throne. After all, how old is he now? Although he doesn't want to die, he also knows that people will die sooner or later. I am afraid that when the new emperor ascends the throne, this child not married yet. It is precisely because I feel that my youngest son will definitely not be the emperor, and he is too young, so it shouldn't be a big deal for me to chat with him about gossips and my Ji Iking, who is capable, reliable, honest, patriotic, and always thinks about me. The youngest son came after that. The emperor hugged him and began to talk and boast about how caring and powerful Ji Iking was. The little prince, who was only 4 years old, sat ignorantly on his father's lap. Although he still couldn't understand much, his head with a good memory memorized all these words. Later, the emperor suddenly discovered that his youngest son was a perfect tree hole. His biological son is not afraid of taboos, he is young, and he is not afraid of other thoughts. He is the legitimate son, and it is natural to dote on the legitimate son. Moreover, he previously neglected the third prince, which caused the queen's prestige in the harem to decline. Now doting on the younger son can also make the harem stable. Just perfect. As a result, the 4-year-old prince continued to work as a tree hole until he was 6 years old. The father's complaints about the court, his dissatisfaction with his ministers, his enjoyment of developing a new system, his expectation for the peace of the country, his love and affection for the people, his ambition for the country, and his daily praise of his beloved, all fell into the ears of the young prince. If he were an ordinary child, he would definitely forget what he heard today and forget it tomorrow. However, he was extremely gifted and had perfect memory, so he actually memorized everything. So, while the other brothers were still studying in the imperial study room, he was already like a sponge, trying hard to absorb his father's encyclopedia of emperor's experience. Then, the emperor lived a very long life. In the year when the little prince had his second child, the emperor was seriously ill and felt that he would soon die. He looked around and found that all his sons with white hair and white beards looked less energetic than him. He looked away in disgust and turned his gaze away. It fell on the youngest son, who has been extremely talented, smart, and well-behaved since he was a child, and is now in his prime. In the 196th year of Angwo's reign, the old emperor died and the new emperor succeeded to the throne. Ji Chang's political opponents were quite gloating about his misfortune, thinking that the former emperor's favored minister who crushed all ministers during his time must be very annoying to the new emperor. Even if they are not suppressed, I am afraid that Mr. G's era will be over. However, the new emperor, who has heard his father say my caring Ji Iking, my reliable Ji Iking and my Ji Iking who alone can match the civil and military officials of the dynasty since he was a child, has inherited his father's good tradition. After he ascended the throne, he just said, "Hurry up and declare my Ji Iking." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Everyone knows I'm a good man. Author, HandsomeMaleLead. Chapter 116. Ji Chang's can be regarded as the most legendary minister since the founding of Angguo. His grades in the scientific examination were mediocre. Although he could not be said to be very bad, he was definitely not good. Logically speaking, such a person would not be accepted as a son-in-law by officials. However, Master Wei, who was still the censor Zhongcheng at the time, had a good vision and insisted on taking this person. He dug out a big pearl filled with sand and married his daughter to Ji Chang's. It is said that no one at that time could understand why Mr. Wei could marry his daughter to such a son-in-law who was born in a merchant family, had mediocre grades and had no relationship with him before, and still supported him in the following days, especially when Mr. Ji returned. During the dynasty, when he carried out many policies with the late emperor, his father-in-law, Mr. Wei, was always his most loyal supporter. They were all father and son soldiers, so it was better for them to have their turn, and it was directly replaced by Weng's son-in-law to stand on the united front. When Ji Chang's political talent gradually emerged, and he successfully became the late emperor's super confidant, leading Angguo to make one shocking change after another, those who had talked about Mr. Wei behind his back were probably old-minded. Only then did the confused people suddenly realize and regret their mistakes. I can't complain. Daking is not because someone is stupid, but because he is too smart. Although Ji Chang's is not a powerful man, he is close to it, but he has always been upright in his conduct. Even if he has power, he has never done anything to seek personal gain with power. He is also very thick-skinned, and his political opponents can force him to do anything. It won't hurt him at all. Being thick-skinned is recognized by the whole court. If he is not thick-skinned, can he do the kind of thing where he reports to His Majesty every month his account book, what he ate, drank, had sex, how much money he earned, and where the money was used, all reported to His Majesty verbatim? Among the officials who did not dare to make their family assets transparent, this guy was obviously a scoundrel for doing so, but the late emperor still tried to do this. Every time someone impeached Ji Chang's, the late emperor always wanted to talk about the account books. Regarding this matter, let me tell you again that you actually think Ji Iking is not good here and there. You should surpass him first before talking about it. If you can do it, go ahead. If you can't do it, don't force me. Although these ministers wanted to reply, if I can't do it, I will force it. However, this is a feudal society where the power of life and death is handed over to the imperial power. This is definitely the end of the world, so I can only close up in sorrow and anger. It's not okay if you don't close the microphone. Haven't you heard that Your Majesty calls you Qing when you call me, and you love Qing when you call others? The political opponents were sad and angry, and the political opponents were desperate. They felt that His Majesty had been deceived by Ji Chang's sweet words. Just looking at how long Ji Chang stood beside him, the officials who once agreed with them but were now brainwashed to side with Ji Chang's knew it. This guy is very capable of deceiving people. They just held in their breath. Although they didn't dare to say it on the outside, in their hearts they planned to hold on until the end, just to endure it. We must also make Ji Chang survive. As a result, the late emperor was kind-hearted and lived a long life. Before Ji Chang's fell, Many more old-fashioned officials were driven underground first. The rest finally managed to hold on until the former emperor, Ji Chang's biggest supporter, went down, hoping that the new emperor could properly gather his own team. As for Ji Chang's, the former emperor's favorite, according to the old rules, he was not the mascot is to gradually move him away from the center of power. They are looking forward to it. They were excited. They are so happy that they want to go to heaven. Then, the new emperor Ji Chui came to power. The first thing he did after he secured his seat was to ask Ji Chang's to go to the imperial study room and send away all the people serving him. The two of them talked in secret for 2.5 hours. Then, Ji Chang successfully sold the plan that the late emperor had not agreed with before. The late emperor indeed trusted Ji Chang's very much, but he was also an old man. Unlike the new emperor in his prime, he was conservative and only wanted to maintain the status quo. Some of the plans Ji Chang's wanted to make were too radical and did not get the late emperor's consent. But the new emperor is different. The new emperor is full of sharpness, young and vigorous. He has had a good mind since he was a child and has rarely encountered any setbacks. The wife he married is good-looking and has a good family background. The two children he gave birth to are both legitimate sons. In terms of political affairs, because he has had a good relationship since he was a child. The late emperor taught, tree hole, and he was influenced by his ears and eyes, and he did better than everyone imagined. At this time, Ji Chang's came up with an idea and said, "Your Majesty, we can't just keep things as we are, we need to reform." The late emperor, who had thought Ji Iking is a great talent since he was a child, thought about it for an hour after reading his plan and the prepared materials. Then he agreed. The late emperor had Ji Chang's, which allowed Angguo, which was originally in decline, to slowly recover. But with Ji Chang's, the new emperor gave wings to the entire Angguo, trying to soar into the sky. Ji Chang said one thing to the previous emperor, and another to the new emperor. As a result, both emperors were very happy. They felt that Ji Iking was indeed Ji Iking, and I was like the same pot with the same lid. Although Ji Chang's himself knew that he was a universal pot lid, he could cover even a pot as big as a building, but the victims, no, the people being helped did not know. As a result, Ji Chang's political opponents were disappointed. After the new emperor ascended the throne, Ji Chang's hit it off with him, and the two fought vigorously for 5 years. By the 6th year, the political opponents had become numb. Well, they gave up the struggle. Ji Chang's was clearly a vixen who could confuse people's hearts. They had survived the previous emperor, how could they survive the strong new emperor? Moreover, Ji Chang's is simply too vicious and full of bad intentions. He would never use any means against his political opponents. They were all people who wanted to save face. Naturally, these political opponents were embarrassed to use those dirty means. Anyone who knew how to use such means would have been killed by Ji Chang's long ago, so this was as a result, they only talk about it. The daily routine is probably what are you looking at? How are you looking at you? You dare to look at me and I will look at you. Elementary school students can fight better than them. Not only did Ji Chang's never attack them, he also spoke in a nice and gentle manner, which made his colleagues who were officials in the same dynasty feel that they were too serious, but they just had different stances. Since they didn't care, why bother? Every time, this man with a gentle smile would make his political opponents want to vomit blood. Obviously everyone has different stances and are enemies, but Ji Chang's, the White Lotus, makes it seem like they have gone too far to bully others. Let's find out, please. When did they and Ji Chang's have different opinions? They won in the end. Ji Chang's is said to be sinister, and he is very good at winning people's hearts through small favors. Everyone knows that the officials under Ji Chang's will not only receive personal bonuses from him, but also material rewards, and rewards for children at home to go to kindergarten. Moreover, he never bothers to take the credit of his subordinates. If everyone does a great thing together, he will be rewarded. They all reported as they should, so the people under Ji Chang's were also the ones who were promoted the fastest. Moreover, while he protects his own shortcomings, he does not protect his shortcomings too much. If he is wrong, he is wrong. Even if this person is his protege, he will not interfere, and he will even take the initiative to collect evidence of crime. But if his subordinates have not done anything wrong, he will not do anything wrong. If you are slandered, it will blow up a hornet's nest. Ji Chang's is a person who is not willing to give up and will never stop after paying the price. There were also some people who went to complain to the late emperor at that time, saying that Ji Chang's was involved in forming cliques for personal gain. He clearly wanted to serve as an official in the court to do things for His Majesty, but in the end, those people all believed that Ji Chang's was following his lead. The late emperor, I can't hear you. This is another trait of Ji Chang's. Even though he has connections all over the court, he can make a sworn brother out of him with just a few presses, but he never takes the initiative to get involved in military power, nor does he make friends with military attaches. This is the greatest sincerity to reassure the emperor. No matter how hard a group of literati work, what can they accomplish? Even if all the civil servants in the court are on Ji Chang's side, for the emperor who has military power in his hands, he can still sit back and relax. This is the difference between the thinking of superiors and inferiors. The person who filed the complaint did not get the outcome he wanted, and felt sad and angry in his heart. His Majesty was also deceived by this guy. After living strong for another 20 years, he finally waited for the new emperor. He was overjoyed and hurried over to complain. One thing. The new emperor didn't pretend not to hear, he started scolding directly, "You have nothing to do, right? Ji King needs to do something practical. What are you doing? If you have nothing to do this, and that for me. I am so busy every day that my feet never touch the ground. I wish I could grow 18 pairs of hands to work. As my confidant, if you don't work hard, you will be like a talkative woman. How shameless! Complainant, I am actually His Majesty's confidant." Before he could be happy for a while, the new emperor threw a lot of things at him, and asked him to do it as quickly as possible on the grounds that if you weren't my confidant, I wouldn't leave these things to you. Suddenly becoming His Majesty's confidant, the complainant felt that he was full of energy and no longer wanted to complain, nor was he sad or angry. He happily went back with his things and began to work hard. Seeing this, the new emperor, whose feet never touched the ground, was satisfied. He changed into his regular clothes and went out to go fishing with Ji King. Ji King is right. This kind of work that can be left to the ministers can be left to them. They are happy and the burden on him is lightened. It is obviously a win-win situation, so why does he have to do it all by himself? He is clearly the master of the world, and he does what he does like a long-term worker who never gets a break. No wonder my father lived a long life, he must also live a long life in the future. 2 days after the new emperor was happy, Ji Chang's resigned. The reason is that I have already done all the things that need to be done for you. Now the world is at peace, the people have enough food and clothing, your Majesty is in high spirits, and I am no longer needed in the court. I will take my leave. New emperor, but, Ji King, you have been my father's lover for more than 20 years. I don't want 20 years. Can't I make up the whole number of 10 years? Ji Chang's and Malu refused. He is not stupid. He has no work to do now. If he retreats at this time, the emperor will only think of his kindness. If he does not retreat, now that the emperor has finished opening up the outside, his attention will be on the court. By then, Ji Chang's will neither be able to making new contributions and standing in a high position to respond to hundreds of calls, even if the emperor is a bastard, sooner or later he will not be able to bear it anymore. Now is the best time to run away. He bid farewell to the emperor and returned to his hometown with his family and relatives. From then on, there was one less minister in the court, but there was one more legendary god in the history class of later generations. Everyone knows I'm a good man. Author, Tang Zhongmao. Chapter 117. Ji Changs and Wei Junkan also lived as long as the two new emperors. They lived a full 115 years before passing away on a sunny day. Ding. The mission is completed. Please select vacation to continue the mission. Continue the mission. At that time, although Ji Changs was no longer in the court, his reputation had already spread all over the world. Countless students came to mourn because he and his wife settled in Weeping Lu after the death of their elder. Even though Weeping Lu had developed into a tourist attraction at that time, people came to cry. The local residents who are still crowded are unable to go out. Countless poems in memory of Ji Changs appeared on the day of his burial. Therefore, there is an unspoken rule among later generations of students. Once they encounter poems in memory of Ji Changs and ask the time, it is definitely the time to bury him. But, there are also surprises. Zhao Yuzi's poem in memory of Ji Changs was not written during the funeral. How is it possible? I clearly remember that he cried and fainted several times at the funeral. After he finished writing such a poem, did the teacher judge the paper wrong? I also remember that I wrote it during the funeral. I also specifically wrote about him crying and fainting several times to express his grief at that time. What's going on? I can't be wrong. I watched the funeral documentary last week, and it clearly contained the poem that Zhao Yuzi wrote there. When the test papers were handed out, there was a roar in the classroom. On the other hand, some top students with good grades remained calm. You remember wrongly. Zhao Yuzi wrote a poem in memory of Ji Changs when he was funeral, but later he also wrote a poem in memory of Ji Changs before he went to Huzhou to be the governor. Later, when he took office in Changzhou, he also wrote. In total, he wrote a total of 15 poems in memory of Ji Changs throughout his life. Scumbags. Yeah, they should have thought of that. Most of the officials in Angwo regarded Ji Changs as their life mentor. At that time, the academies he ran were almost all over Angwo, creating opportunities for countless poor families who wanted to study but could not afford the tuition, because almost half of the candidates every year came from him. Came out of the academy, and in the end, all the powerful children were sent in by their parents. It can be said that when Ji Changs passed away, the civil and military officials of the Manchu dynasty could be regarded as having a teacher-student relationship with him. In addition to the things he did for Angwo, he discovered kerosene, made cement, made glass, and tinkered with chemical fertilizers. He turned the originally barren Weeping Willows into a tourist destination, and the academy he opened became the most sacred place in the minds of literati all over the world. As a literati, I like to write poetry or something like that. And Ji Changs is the person most respected by most literati. His presence in poetry is unparalleled. In addition, he attached great importance to Angwo's security and naval division. At that time, Angwo regained its lost territory, fought against pirates, and established sea vessels for trade. These were all Ji Chang's suggestions. As a result, this respected boss became both hated and respected by the students. At first, there was no special test on mathematics in the scientific examination. It was Ji Chang's suggestion that such a subject be added. As a result, from ancient times to the present, mathematics, a subject that many students hate so much that they want to bang against the wall, has been retained. In Chinese, it is even more difficult to memorize poems praising, mourning, remembering, and missing Ji Changs until I feel bald. But because they all point to one person, it is especially easy to memorize them. The explosion of these poems related to Ji Changs occurred within 1 to 5 years after his death. An official ate a sweet and sour pork tenderloin, and as he ate, he remembered that he had studied in Mr. Ji's academy when he was 16 years old. He was young at that time and his family was not well off. Although the canteen was free, he was timid and did not dare to eat more. He had not resigned at that time. Mr. G, who held the position of dean, inspected the school and noticed his embarrassment. He ordered a sweet and sour pork tenderloin and finished the meal with him. Afterwards, he told him that the school's free admission was not a charity, nor was it simply a matter of doing good deeds. It is to enable them, the future of Angwo, to thrive and become useful people to the country in the future. From then on, he worked hard, and finally got a good name and an official position. His favorite dish has always been the sweet and sour pork. Now that he sees things and thinks about people, he can't help but compose a poem to express his gratitude to his elders. Talent and a heart for good. A certain student read about Ji Chang's past and yearned for him but had no chance to meet him. He wrote a poem to express his gratitude for why he could not have been born decades earlier. A certain scholar was depressed and frustrated. He remembered that Mr. G had not achieved very high grades, but he had also made such political achievements. He was shocked and wrote a poem to express that he should not feel sorry for himself. In short, at that time, most of the people in Angwo who had some literary talent wrote poems in memory of Ji Chang's. There is still a small half of it. He wrote one every other year, two every 2 years, and before he died, he laughed 3 times and wrote the next one, ha 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 ha. Don't be sad when I die. I can finally go, it's time to meet Mr. G underground. You can imagine how desperate today's students feel every time they recite poetry. Not to mention the history books, Angwo is the most prosperous country in history, and it can even be said to be a country that has broken through the times. When Ji Chang's died, cement roads had been built everywhere in Angwo. The merchant fleet was the strongest in the world at that time. The emperor was a thief, hiding his own technology while learning good foreign technology. Later, during the World War, some countries wanted to take a bite of Angwo's flesh, but were directly beaten out by Angwo and received war compensation. The Angwo emperor at that time was the loyal Ji Chui. At that time, when all countries were slowly changing their systems, he made a major decision because of Ji Chang's ideas 200 years ago. He resigned from the throne and changed to a socialist system more suitable for the development of the country. From an emperor who has the power of life and death to personally declaring that everyone's life is equal and important, and voluntarily giving up his privileges without coercion, and even when the throne is very stable, the emperor's own character is naturally worthy of admiration, but he insisted that it was Ji Chang's, who had been dead for 200 years, who brought him the idea. Therefore, even when today's republic is established, Ji Chang's philosophy must be memorized for 200 years. And for those who study history, it is even more crazy. The scumbag knelt down again, I'm going to die, I'm going to die. Why do we not only have to carry Ji Chang's, but also his wife, his brother-in-law, his father-in-law, his parents, his 2 sons, and his 6 grandsons, 1 granddaughter, and his great-grandchildren? I really feel like I'm not reciting a history book, I'm reciting a family tree. The top student said that this was nothing. If we really want to calculate it like this, we still have to carry his 3 loyal subordinates, his subordinates' sons and daughters, his 18 students, 203 confidants, and... Stop, stop, stop. Stop talking, I'm going to burp if you keep talking. The scumbag broke down and covered his ears. Is he collecting cards? Why do he have so many confidants? Oh my God, these confidants are quite capable. It's too difficult. It's so difficult. It's okay. The 203 confidants are not mentioned too many times in the test paper. After all, they are not left behind by official history, but written in Ji Chang's diary when his tomb was discovered. Speaking of which, don't you think it is very difficult to memorize these? Is it interesting? Although only a quarter of these 203 confidants were court officials, they made shocking contributions to the development of Angwo at that time, and... The scumbag hugged the table, I'm shocked right now. I don't want to memorize the names of 203 people. Is there anything more terrifying in this world than memorizing the list of Jinaga's confidants? Ding. The top student looked down at the message that popped up on the study watch on his wrist, and sighed, yes. The descendants of the Ji family donated Ji Chang's original complete notebook. His real number of confidants was 1,545. The list of confidants in the tomb only recorded people up to the age of 45. The descendants of the Ji family donated, that's the full version. Slacker student. Furthermore, the notepad also helped the then Emperor Tianyuan write down the list of his confidants. Emperor Tianyuan had more than 500 confidants. Emperor Tianyuan has always been the focus of the examination. I guess we will also have to memorize his confidants. School scumbag, the two of them are Neptunes. How big of a heart can they have so many confidants? The scholar said seriously, in fact, the next emperor also inherited his father's fine tradition of having confidants everywhere. Slacker student. Today is another day when Ji Chang's drives him crazy. I don't know why, but both history and teachers' evaluations say that King Ji Chang's was a gentleman with a clear breeze and bright moon, and a humble gentleman with great virtues. But the scumbag just thinks that this Ji Chang's must be a very bad person. Woohoo, it must be. Everyone knows I'm a good man. Author, Tang Zhongmao. Chapter 118. As soon as Ji Chang's arrived in this world, he realized that he had to be serious this time. Because the original owner was having sex at the moment, he silently propped up his slightly weak body, found the medicine box, and skillfully bandaged the place where he had just cut his wrist. The reason for the original owner's EISA was that as a teacher, he instigated the attempt on the life of two teenage middle school boys ZISA, and the reason for the failure was not that he wanted to stop the situation, but that the two teenagers were dating at the time. There happened to be a policeman having lunch on the rooftop of ISA. He realized something was wrong and risked his life to save the two of them. When the two students who were in a daze were sent to the hospital and woke up, the parents and the police were all there. With one sentence, wouldn't the culprit be found out? The original owner ZISA is not afraid of crime ZISA. After all, although he instigated, he only made insinuations or hints. Even if two students confessed to him without evidence, he usually behaved well, as long as he is not guilty of thinking the same thing. He just feels that his mask has been exposed. It is like a good student who has been taking the exam with a score of 100%. Suddenly one day he only scored 80%. Even if he passed, the good student is happy. He couldn't get up. Anyway, he had no respect for living or dead. In addition, he was curious about whether there were really ghosts in the world, so he quickly slit his wrists when he got home. Ji Chang's analyzed that the original owner should have psychological problems. His usual image is gentle and harmless, he speaks softly to students, is considerate to colleagues, respectful to superiors, and very patient when talking to parents. He has a very good reputation in this middle school. But that's just a mask he put on. The original owner was actually mentally ill because his father abused him for nearly 10 years when he was young. He disguised himself as an excellent and perfect person, and it was nothing. The reason was that he just wanted to be like this, and when the mask was in danger of being revealed, he immediately chose ZISA. As for whether there are really ghosts in the world, the reason why the two students chose ZISA was because they chose to confide in their most trusted teacher, saying that they had seen ghosts, and the ghost was haunting them, and the two of them were in fear and worry day and night, and their spirits were pushed to the verge of collapse. Only then did they choose ZISA at the slightest instigation from the original owner. As for the purpose of the original owner in instigating them, he had no purpose. He just didn't instigate other people. He just wanted to try to end other people's lives with just a few words. Ji Chang's recalled what the original owner did. Although there was no evidence that he instigated the two children, they were already obsessed with each other. Parents would definitely believe what he said. In addition, the original owner himself had also seen a psychiatrist. If the police must investigate, and they will definitely find out that he suffers from mental illness and is extremely aggressive. In fact, the police are already investigating. If the original development were to follow, the police should have broken in after finding out something was wrong with the original owner. As a result, when they came in, they found that he was afraid of crime. Ji Chang circled the bandage on his wrist, stood up and glanced at the mirror in the bathroom. The original owner was curious about whether there were ghosts in the world, and the two students who really aroused his curiosity were the students in the second phase of the secondary school. Occasionally there would be some drama stars, but I am afraid that even the most skilled actors would not be able to interpret their characters. Terror and fear. It was precisely because he saw that the two of them were really scared, as if they had really seen those things, that the original owner instigated the two students with a calm mentality of "then I will let them die first." When I decided to die later, I didn't have any fear. To put it bluntly, his mind was abnormal. His decision to die was as ordinary and simple as deciding what to eat for breakfast today. There is no need to clean up the history of mental illness. It is all recorded and the police will definitely be able to find it. There is no excuse for instigating ZIISA. The two students were indeed instigated by him. The system popped up: in a highly difficult world, the host can purchase props to overcome difficulties. Ji Chang's, don't buy it. The system refuses to give up. The system estimates that this world is SSSS level, and it will be difficult for the host to pass without purchasing props. Ji Chang's, don't buy it. There is no way to take the points out of his pocket. System. Although I have known for a long time that the host will most likely not buy it, I am still worried about what is going on, if it has the intention. After Ji Chang's rejected the system, he searched in his mind and found a skill suitable for the supernatural world. Every time he went to a difficult world, he insisted not to buy props. Even if he turned into stone, he would still rely on his own efforts to practice. Of course, it was not for self-abuse, but for the skills he had learned before when he encountered similar worlds in the future. You can take it out and use it again. Think about it: if you buy props when you encounter a difficult world, wouldn't you have to buy props again the next time you encounter the same type of difficult world after you get through it safely? Ji Chang's is different. When he encounters a difficult world, he would rather endure hardships and waste time than use props. Instead, he fights hard on his own and learns new skills. He has learned everything from hacker cultivation contracts to magic and martial arts abilities. This is different from the props. He learned it by himself and has always engraved it in his memory. When the next difficult world of the same type comes, he has enough knowledge in his mind to go directly to heaven. Although it is said that the world of martial arts cannot be like a fairy tale Feng, the ordinary world cannot adopt the supernatural style, but in the martial arts world he can directly become the world's #1 master. In the ordinary world, he can quickly become the richest man even if he follows the ordinary people's money-making process, which is equivalent to going directly from the difficult mode to the easy mode. It feels good if you don't buy props for a while, and you feel good if you don't buy props all the time. Today, he is also so diligent and thrifty. Ji Chang stayed in seclusion for a day. As soon as he came out, he went straight to the hospital. The two students suffered too much stimulation. Although they were rescued, their spirits have been unstable and their vital signs have been rising and falling, so they are still in the hospital. Speaking of which, these two students were relatively young. The two families were neighbors and their parents had a very good relationship. They grew up together and attended the same school, so this time they committed suicide together. They were at their most daring at the moment. They heard that there was a ghost in a house near the school, so they made an appointment to explore secretly, and even chose to go in at 12 o'clock in the evening. This is not a world where ghosts do not exist. You can imagine what they met. Not only did they meet, but they were also entangled. No matter how brave the two were, they were just teenagers. They were tortured to the verge of collapse, but they were too old before. Naughty, the parents didn't believe what they said and thought they were being deceitful. In desperation, they found their most trusted teacher, the original owner, hoping that the original owner could believe them. The original owner was dubious. In order to verify whether there are ghosts in this world and to try to instruct ZISA, he induced two students ZISA and told them that if you encounter a ghost, you must come to him. Of course, in order to make these two students who collapsed but didn't really want to die, he said something else. When Ji Chang's opened the door to the ward, the usually lively and cheerful student was huddled under the quilt with a pale face and eyes blank, muttering something in his mouth, "I must die, I must die. If I don't die, they will kill me," losing mom and dad. He was also wearing a restraint to prevent him from committing suicide again. Next to him, the student's mother was looking at her son wiping tears with a painful look on her face. Her husband and 3 police officers were sitting next to her. Ji Chang saw it and said with a smile, "It's so lively. It's you." The student's mother became angry almost as soon as she turned around and saw Ji Chang's expression. She stood up suddenly and rushed towards him, her voice full of hatred. "What did you say to my Chiao Chiao? You almost killed me, damn my child." The 3 police officers quickly went to hold her up and prevent her from coming forward. "Kiao Kiao's mother, the matter has not been investigated clearly yet. Chiao Chiao just woke up, so it may not be their teacher who did it. Who else but him?" Both Han Chiao and Zheng Jiao said that it was Ji Chang's who told them that if they didn't die, their parents would die. If he hadn't said these words, how could the two of them have done this? The policewoman discovered that even if the parents made such a fuss, teacher Ji was not affected. Instead, she looked calm and mocking. She didn't even look at Mother Han, but walked around her and put her hands on her. The white chrysanthemum she was holding was placed on the bedside table between the 2 children's beds. At this moment, Mother Han exploded again. "What do you mean by bringing white chrysanthemums here? This thing can kill people. This teacher Ji's attitude is wrong. It is certainly impossible for a normal person to have such an attitude when encountering this kind of situation." She calmly approached Ji Chang's, trying to stop him as soon as any special situation occurred. As a result, Ji Chang's had no intention of doing anything violent. Instead, he calmly arranged the white chrysanthemums, turned around and sat by the bed. Then he smiled very tenderly and said to Mother Han, "I made a mistake in my judgment. I originally thought that this bouquet of flowers could be handed to the tombstones of Han Qiao and Wang Zhengqiao, but I didn't expect that they are still alive." Mother Han and Father Han both looked at each other for a moment, and then looked at Ji Chang's with even more hatred, and the 3 policemen instantly became more vigilant. Father Han said, "Comrade police, you heard it? He admitted it. He admitted that he made our Chiao Chiao cheat. You should arrest him quickly." Ji Chang's smile deepened, and under everyone's nervous gaze, he took Han Chiao's hand and looked at them with raised eyebrows. "When did I admit that I let Han Chiao die? I just knew they were going to die. Even if they don't die today, tomorrow, or within 3 days, they will still die. The child was cursed to die within 3 days. The reason why Han's parents didn't come up to beat him was because the police were stopping him." The female police officer quietly walked around behind Ji Chang's, while the other 2 male police officers stabilized the Han family's parents while talking to Ji Chang's. "What do you mean by this? The doctor has obviously checked them both. The physical health of these 2 children, yes, they are not sick. Why do you say they will die within 3 days? Haunted?" Ji Chang's attitude was quite calm. He took Han Qiao's hand and waved to the person standing opposite. "You can't see it?" At this time, Han Qiao's hand is being pulled hard by 2 ghosts, one on the left and one on the right. "Look at his expression, is it painful?" He has endured this pain for nearly a month. During this month, when he looked in the mirror, he would see a faceless ghost strangling his neck. When he washed, his head will be pushed into the water. During class, there will be a ghost with long hair and red eyes in front of him, so that he cannot see the blackboard or the teacher. When he sleeps, he will be dragged under the bed in his sleep, pulling his body against the wall. Even now, in your eyes, he is resting on the bed, but in fact, he has at least a dozen ghosts on him. They scratch his head, limbs, and press on him. If he can't breathe, how long can you hold on if it's you? Ji Chang's did not use any adjectives, nor did he describe how terrifying the appearance of these ghosts was. He even spoke in a calm tone. But his words seemed to have real magic power, and everyone present seemed to see that scene before their eyes. Who are you lying to? If that's the case, why didn't Xiao tell us? It's obvious that you didn't know how to make Xiao become like this. It was you who wanted to kill my son. Ji Chang's asked them, did Han Xiao really not tell you that there were ghosts around them that were haunting them? Father and Mother Han were stunned. Looking at their expressions, Ji Chang smiled, did he say that right? But didn't you take it seriously at first, and you thought Han Xiao was deliberately lying to you? This is the great thing about those things. They won't go too far at the beginning. They will lose Han Xiao's homework, deliberately take away the pocket money you gave him and throw it away, and hit him when you are not paying attention while he is eating. He turned over the food on the table and put the blame on Han Xiao, making everything in the house a mess, and Han Xiao was the only one at home. In this case, Han Xiao tells you that it was not him who did it, but the ghost who has been pestering him. Do you think your child is really haunted by the ghost, or do you think he is just making excuses? Cover up a crime. Everyone in the room was stunned when he said this. Including the 3 policemen, they all began to think about it. If their children told them that it was a ghost under such circumstances, they would not believe it. Instead, they would think that the child was treating themselves as a fool. And this is exactly what the ghosts that haunt Han Xiao want to see. When no one believes Han Xiao anymore, they will make other actions. Han Xiao's truth and help are all regarded as lies. This 10 children of a few years old can only bear everything in such despair. It was clearly daytime at this moment, but everyone was covered in cold sweat behind their backs. Especially Han's father and mother. What Ji Chang said was exactly what happened at home some time ago. They did not take it seriously. Instead, they scolded Han Xiao for making excuses. Han Xiao once told them that there was a ghost haunting them. He deliberately teased him and didn't want him to look at the blackboard, but because Han Xiao had always been naughty and didn't like studying, and he had made up lies to deceive them before, the 2 of them never believed it. Later, Han Xiao stopped telling them these things. Sometimes there would be a banging sound in his room. If they thought the child was naughty, they would open the door to scold him. At that time, Han Xiao would lie down on the ground. He said at first that something had thrown him to the ground. Later, when they scolded him, he slowly got up and listened to them in silence without saying a word. Even if reason tells them that there are no ghosts in this world, what happened before and Han Xiao's current state still make Han's parents uncontrollably panicked. What if what Ji Chang said is true? After they turned a blind eye to Han Xiao's plea for help, were those things torturing their children just across the wall? Ji Chang's lowered his eyes and glanced at Han Xiao's limbs, let go of his hands and stood up. They started to pull his limbs. Have you ever heard of quartering him into pieces? Han Xiao is almost being tortured like this now. Han Xiao started to cry. His face was pale. While crying, he looked at his parents. It hurts, I hurt so much, Mom. It hurts. Where does it hurt? Xiao Xiao, Xiao Xiao. Mother Han didn't know where she got the strength. She frantically broke free from the shackles of the male police officer, ran to her son's side, touched his face and asked, "Tell Mom, Where do you feel pain? Don't be afraid. Mom is here. Mom is here this. She didn't know if what Ji Chang said was true, but her mother's desire to protect her children still made her coax Han Jiao while reaching out to beat the air around Han Jiao's limbs. What the hell? Get away. Get away. Don't pester my son. Ji Chang's closed his eyes and opened them again. Han Jiao in front of him was still crying and struggling, but there were thin and dark things standing on his limbs and head. They were laughing and laughing. The harder Han Jiao cried, the happier they were, sharp and sharp. The long black and thin claws grabbed Han Jiao's limbs and pulled them far away. This place is like another space. Only Han Jiao can feel the pain. In reality, in the eyes of others, his limbs are just stiff, and there is not even a fingerprint of being caught on his ankle. Naturally, Mother Han's hands passed over the little ghosts, unable to get close to them at all. When the little ghost saw Han Jiao looking at him in fear, he grinned, revealing rows of sharp teeth like sharks in his mouth. It stretched out its paws and stuffed it into its mouth, looked at Han Jiao with resentful and greedy eyes, and made a vague sound in its mouth, "Eat you, bite by bite, eat you." It just said this sentence repeatedly, and while saying it, it crawled onto Han Jiao. Under Han Jiao's fearful gaze, it opened its mouth like a snake until it was bigger than his face. There was something in the mouth. Rows of thin fangs, with maggots stained with the stench of blood, fell onto Han Jiao's face. The maggots fell and began to open a mouth that shouldn't exist, eating the face of the teenage boy one by one. Ah! Han Jiao screamed miserably and began to struggle crazily, but no matter how hard he struggled, these little devils seemed to be stuck to him and could not be shaken off. Even if he closed his eyes, the pain of his limbs being pulled and the malicious laughter were still with him. Ji Chang's frowned. The policewoman who was approaching him from behind heard the person in front of him talking to himself, and said with disgust, "That's disgusting." "What? What's disgusting?" Just as he was thinking about it, he saw Ji Chang's reaching out in the direction of Han Jiao and making a gesture of grabbing something. His face was full of disgust and disgust. "You want his life to be nothing to do with me, but you are so disgusting that my eyes are so disgusting it matters." Click. Ji Chang's crushed the kid in his hand. The brat who was so arrogant and proud just now turned into ashes. The other brats who were jumping around and laughing were frightened. They all looked at Ji Chang's in fear and did not dare to do anything to Han Jiao on the bed. Han Jiao was let go and began to breathe heavily, and finally stopped screaming. As soon as Ji Chang's finished this action, Han Jiao suddenly became quiet. Even if the other people in the room couldn't see the brats, he felt a tingle in his heart at this moment. The policewoman felt nervous for a while, but thinking that there were no ghosts in the world, she forced herself to calm down and tried to quietly restrain Ji Chang's, who looked very abnormal. Seeing that she was about to stretch out her hand, Ji Chang suddenly turned around and looked at the policewoman as if there were eyes behind his back. When she held her breath and looked at him nervously, she turned back to look at the opposite person as if nothing had happened. The two policemen still had gentle expressions on their faces. "Comrade police, do you want me to cooperate with your investigation?" Policewoman. When being taken away by the police, Ji Chang's did not resist at all. He even followed the three police officers obediently. Before leaving, he glanced at Han Jiao who had calmed down on the bed and smiled gently. "Teachers and students are together. Now, the teacher reminds you that they were all abandoned by their parents. The better your parents treat you, the more jealous they will be of you and the more they will torment you. If you want to have a good sleep, it is best not to let your parents treat you badly. You are too good. Of course, the best way is to die immediately. When you die and become the same thing as them, you will naturally be able to take revenge. What just happened really makes people think too much." The hatred in the eyes of Father and Mother Han was gone at this moment, leaving only confusion and doubt. They just stood there and watched Ji Chang's being taken away. After getting in the car, Ji Chang sat upright. When the policewoman came, he stepped aside like a gentleman. The policewoman tentatively asked Ji Chang's, "Do you think there are really ghosts in the world?" "Depending on how you understand it, ghosts are just what we call them. If you ask me, they may be another kind of creature, a creature that is both lower than human beings and yet transcends human beings." "Policewoman, don't ghosts become human beings?" "Ji Chang's, you can't say that. It should be said that it is a new species that is born after a person dies. Do you know about dimensional space? We are three-dimensional creatures, but these ghosts are not. They live in another dimensional space, and there is no such thing as the fourth dimension. The two dimensions are too low. According to the dimensions we currently divide, there should be no suitable dimensions for them. In most cases, humans cannot see them or touch them, but they can see humans, but also it's precisely because the space is different that they can't touch humans and can't do anything to humans, so most people can't actually see ghosts. But if something unexpected happens, it's like Han Chiao. His dimension merges with the dimensions of those little ghosts. He can see them and they can touch him, but Han Chiao's parents can't see them, so when Han Chiao endured their torture, his parents couldn't help him at all. Do you understand? Ji Chang's attitude was very gentle, just like a teacher lecturing to studious students. However, the policewoman was confused and was unconsciously carried away by his topic, but ghosts are not feudal superstition. Ghosts are feudal superstitions. Most of them are made up by people, but these things in another dimension are not. Just like now, when you open the window, there are ghosts outside. A hanged ghost just passed in front of a smoking man. It floats by, but men can't see it, and the hanged ghost can't touch him, so for men who are still human beings, ghosts don't exist. Because they can't be touched, they don't exist, but that doesn't mean it really doesn't exist. Exist. Policewoman. She said, "I still don't understand. According to what you said, there are ghosts living around us all the time, but we humans can't see them." Ji Chang's nodded, seeing that she still looked unconvinced, and continued. "Let me tell you this, you know about microscopes, right? If you just find something and magnify it, you will see the bacteria living on it. In their world, bacteria also come in different sizes, different shapes, ethnic groups, and wars. Regardless of whether they have thoughts or not, we do live in the same world as them, right? To put it more clearly, we can see bacteria every day, as long as we want to observe them, we can just buy a microscope. Then you say, if they have minds, do they know that we exist? The relationship between us and these bacteria is like the relationship between ghosts and humans. Ghosts can see humans, but they cannot touch humans. Humans cannot see humans at all. Heck, for the same reason, bacteria can't see people because the system is different." The policewoman was confused. "The system is different? What do you mean?" "Ji Chang's, I want you to see what the outside of the universe looks like now. Can you see it?" Policewoman. "Ji Chang's, you still don't understand. Okay, let me put it simply. I bought a piece of bread and if I don't eat it for 3 months, bacteria will grow on it. For these bacteria that are so small that they are invisible to the naked eye, how big is bread? Is it just like the earth to us humans? They are small, so they regard the bread they see as the whole world. What about humans who are bigger than bread? Can they see it? Can't they? Find an ant or a praying mantis and let them see the entire earth. They can't see it. Even if they live on the earth, it's like you are standing on this is the same as not being able to see the outside of the universe or even the entire universe. This is because the system is different. Humans and ghosts have different systems and different dimensions, but if a specific thing happens and space merges, humans can meet ghosts, so don't think this is some feudal superstition, this is science, there are arguments, Believe me, I am a scholar, I will not lie to you. The policeman sitting in the car. The policewoman felt that she was about to be convinced, but fortunately she quickly shook her head and went straight to the point. Then what do you want to do by instigating the two children ZISA? Do you know that they almost died? You their teacher, they trust you and listen to you, is this how you repay their trust? Ji Chang shook his head, his face still gentle. I didn't let them die, nor did I let them survive, but I let them go to another dimension. Policewomen. Ji Chang's was very confident, the space around them has been broken. Those brats are determined to torture them. If they are not stopped, even their parents will be dragged into the space in the next step. I am helping them. The policewoman felt like she was listening to the magical girl cartoon she watched when she was a child. The way you help them is to let them die. No, I let them enter the dimension of the imps. As long as they kill those imps, they will naturally be safe. Policewoman. Then have you ever thought about letting them go to the ghost dimension? No, you let them go to the ghost dimension. How do they come back after killing the little ghost? Ji Chang smiled gently, I will try to bring them back. Try. They jumped from the building. If they really jumped and everyone fell into pieces, how could you do it? Didn't you just kill them? I also said this is not death, but just going to another dimension. I am their teacher, how could I harm them? But if ZISA succeeds, they will indeed die in this world. What is the definition of death? No breathing counts as death? Body decay counts as death? Being unable to move counts as death? Have you ever thought about it, assuming that the death that everyone has always believed is not real death, the dead can still think, but they can never move again. I can no longer control my body. Because I can't move, I can't make a sound. I open my eyes, but my mind is still there. I clearly hear the doctor pronouncing that I am dead. I am clearly sent to the crematorium or buried. My mind is forever trapped in a rotting body, lying there forever. But no one will ever know about this, because it is a secret that only the dead know, and it is absolutely impossible for them to tell the living people that there is definitely a body under this road, which may have been hundreds of years ago, maybe 1,000 years ago. Can you imagine? When the living people walked this road, there were countless dead people lying underneath, quietly listening to the movement above. Ji Chang's voice was calm, but it made everyone in the car get goosebumps. If this is true, it would be terrible to hear the doctor pronounce the death sentence with your own ears and feel that you are still alive, but then you are sent to be buried, trapped in a black world forever, with nothing but your thoughts. Seeing that the face of the person sitting across from him turned ugly and pale, Ji Chang smiled with satisfaction. With this hypothesis, it is easier to accept that the mind will go to another dimension after death. After saying that, he asked with a little doubt, why do you all have such expressions? Are you frightened by my hypothetical words? No need to be like this is just an assumption of mine, and it has not been verified. Everyone. So are you talking so much just to make us believe in the so-called dimensional world? However, just as he relaxed a little, he heard Ji Chang say again, of course, this idea itself cannot be verified. From a certain point of view, as long as there is no way to verify that what I said is wrong, then there is some chance that it is right. Unless you believe that there are really ghosts in this world. The policewoman rubbed her forehead, feeling that they had brought back a ruthless character this time. When we entered the police station, the conversation did not go smoothly. Several colleagues who were talking to Ji Chang's felt their heads were spinning. Isn't this person really the MLM leader you found? He is too eloquent. If I hadn't been strong-willed, I would have been fooled by him. Got in. Another colleague said, actually, what he said makes sense. For example, he just told me that when you look at the world from a snake's perspective, you see a world made up of infrared rays. Some small animals have slow speed when seeing the movements of large animals. Movements. Animals see the world differently, but animals of different species cannot communicate that what they see is completely different from what other animals see. Does this mean that we humans also see the world differently? Just like in ancient times, we thought bacteria didn't exist if we couldn't see them. Now we can't see ghosts, but in fact they. Stop, stop, stop. The older police officer quickly interrupted. Materialism, do you know materialism? Don't be fooled into it by just saying a few words. Find out. He instigated two children to go to the police station. We have to figure this out, otherwise what if he gets carried away and instigates other children to commit suicide? This is a matter of life and death. Ji Chang's happened to come out. After hearing this, he smiled gently and said, "Don't worry, I won't do this next time." The policeman who spoke, "Why did he come out?" The junior said in a low voice, "The parents of those two children said that they made a mistake. Ji Chang's did not instigate their children to commit suicide. Didn't he admit it? Brother, he only admitted that he helped the students enter another dimension. He never admitted that he instigated them from beginning to end." Police. Because the parents changed their story, Ji Chang's never admitted that he instigated the students ZISA. The two children are now fine except for their poor mental state. He still came out of the police station smoothly. As soon as he went out, he was surrounded by two parents. "Teacher Ji, please save our child." A male police officer happened to get off work and witnessed this scene. He thought that Ji Chang's must have caused such a mess in the hospital before. As soon as he took action, the student who was still screaming in agony immediately calmed down and was eager to protect his son. The two families, the parents will definitely want Ji Chang's to help, and they won't blame him for changing his mind and getting the person out. However, after listening to Ji Chang's brainwashing all the way, although he didn't agree with it in his heart, he also had some other opinions about this gentle-looking teacher Ji. He would definitely not agree to help, otherwise he would just help. Ji Chang's refused as expected, and the parents of the two families quickly begged and apologized. "It was our fault before, Teacher Ji, as long as you help, we don't have any problem with how much money we give." Seeing the gentle-looking man refuse again, the male policeman sighed in his heart. How could such a man with the universe in mind agree to such a foreign thing? "Father Wang, Teacher Ji, I really beg you, as long as you help me, not just money, I will give you a banner." Pennant. Hey, poor parents in the world are so sick that they rush to the doctor. How can Ji Chang's, who doesn't take soft and hard thinking and has a firm mind, answer? Ji Chang's, "Okay, deal, save two people, I want two banners, and you have to sincerely praise me for more than 10 minutes. 10 minutes per person." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Everyone knows I'm a good man. Author, Tang Zhongmao. Chapter 119. Of course, if you want to save people, you can't just save them. The parents on both sides were anxious, but Ji Chang's was still taking his time. Father Wang drove them to the hospital. He reached out and opened the window and looked outside. When the car drove near a school, he suddenly said, "Stop." Wang's father was not in the hospital before, but when he came back, he heard what the Han family said about what Ji Chang's did, saying that the two children might really be fascinated by something. Teacher Ji could see those things and was not afraid. After saying a few words, those things subsided for a while, but after almost an hour, maybe because Teacher Ji had been away for a long time, the two children began to scream in pain again. Half-year-old children, who have been hurt by their parents since childhood, how can they bear this pain? They are so painful that they cry for father and mother, begging their parents to save them, but they can't see or touch anything. How can they be saved like this? Father Han and Mother Han thought of Ji Chang's and said that it seemed that he was the only one who could save the children. Wang's father only had such an only son when he was 37 years old. The pain was as painful as his eyes. After hearing this, he immediately rushed to the door of the police station. He had made up his mind to ask them to kowtow to Teacher Ji and ask him. It would be fine to exchange his life for his son's life, but he didn't expect that the banner would be able to persuade Ji Chang's. At this moment, he felt nervous and relaxed at the same time. When he heard Ji Chang's shouting to stop, he subconsciously stepped on the brakes. The car stopped on the road near the elementary school. People in the car looked at Ji Chang's nervously and asked, "Teacher Ji, what are you parking for?" Being looked at by so many eyes, Ji Chang still didn't look like I have a lot of responsibilities on his face. He stretched out his hand to open the car door and said, "I have to go buy something." "What else should I buy?" "This is a matter of life and death." Both pairs of parents were anxious, but no one dared to criticize Ji Chang's, so they all got out of the car, as if they were in need of urination. They did not dare to take a big step, and followed the only savior in small steps. I wanted to open my mouth to say something, but I was afraid of asking too many questions and irritating others and not helping them, so I could only follow Ji Chang's into a bookstore with an anxious face. Ji Chang strolled in, wandered around, looked at the books on the top with a critical eye, then picked up a few more, and before turning around and going out, he didn't forget to say one sentence, "Remember to give money." When he got into the car again, Ji Chang's didn't cause any trouble this time. He just hugged the book and closed his eyes as if he was about to rest. Sitting next to him was Han's father and mother. The two looked at Ji Chang's carefully and then at each other. They didn't dare to disturb him by talking, so they took out their mobile phones and turned them on mute to exchange WeChat messages. "Mother Han, do you see what Teacher Ji is doing?" Father Han thought for a few seconds, maybe he was thinking about how to deal with those things for a while, focusing on calmness and so on. Mother Han, same. Mother Han, this is how it is played in TV dramas. The master may need to do some exercises before doing something. Chiao can't delay. I will search for what is needed for the method first. Teacher Ji will wake up soon. Ask him before you drive to buy it back. Father Han, okay, don't worry. This Teacher Ji looks like he has a lot of skills. He might be some kind of hermit master. Look at the temperament on his body, he doesn't look like an ordinary person. At this moment, he had forgotten how he scolded Teacher Ji when his son said that Ji Chang's told them that their parents would be implicated if they didn't care, so they had to die. None of the four parents said a word along the way, and they all breathed softly. For fear of disturbing Ji Chang's, they arrived downstairs at the hospital calmly. As soon as the car stopped, Ji Chang's opened his eyes, opened the car door and got out. Mother Han quickly followed and asked cautiously, "Teacher Ji, do you think we need to prepare anything, such as black dog blood, rooster blood, glutinous rice boy urine, etc.? No, those are things from our dimension and are useless to them." Ji Chang's patted the book in his hand, "Just use this." Mother Han didn't quite understand. After watching Ji Chang's come to the front, she quietly asked Father Han, "What does this mean? Isn't that book from our dimension?" Father Han's mind immediately showed an alien, running a bookstore. He appeared to be a normal human being, but in fact he occasionally sold some weird things. Then he found out that he was acting like a man in black. A group of people hurried upstairs, and when they pushed open the ward door, the two children looked in pain and were breathing hard. Of course, that's how it seems to these parents. But in Ji Chang's eyes, it was a group of dark and skinny brats who covered the mouths and noses of the two children with dry hands, laughing and joking, deliberately preventing them from breathing. They tortured them deliberately, not wanting to let these two people die. They waited until they could no longer breathe and then let go. They watched them take deep breaths several times before continuing to cover them. Seeing that the two children couldn't get out no matter how hard they struggled, and could only breathe hard and whine in pain, they became more and more happy, jumping around the room with a smile. The parents couldn't see anything, so they hurriedly moved over to carefully help their children calm down. They turned around helplessly and asked Ji Chang's, "Teacher Ji, what on earth are these? Why are they pestering my children? What do they want from us? Give them all, can you let our children go?" When the little devils heard this, the malice in their eyes became even stronger. Under the frightened eyes of the two children, they opened their mouths to reveal the sharp teeth inside, and began to crawl towards them little by little. Click, click. They bit off their own hands and grinned at the completely defenseless humans. Countless bloody maggots fell out of their mouths and went directly into the clothes of the two people. They opened their big mouths and started to eat. Bite. Ah 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 ah. The two children screamed and cried, struggling like crazy, but they were tightly bound by the restraints on their bodies. Seeing their pain, the little devils were happy, their resentful expression slightly faded, and they started laughing again. Ji Chang's was really struck by the viciousness of this scene. He opened the book, randomly selected a page and handed it to the royal father who was nearest to him. Seeing that he was confused, he caught it, then took out the small notebook in his arms and read, while writing. "This is a child who lives in groups. He is short and dark-skinned, skinny, and fleshless. His face is like a mummy. His teeth are sharp and small. He has about 251 teeth in one mouth. He is very jealous. When he is jealous, he spits out maggots from his mouth. He is incapable of brute force. Remove." The parents' hearts trembled when they heard this, and they quickly asked, "Teacher Ji, how can we eliminate them?" Ji Chang's, "It's not difficult. Children's sorrows are usually things that appear after the death of children under the age of 16. The common characteristic of these children is that they cannot get the love of their father and mother, or they think they can't get it, and they are more or less jealous of it. The jealousy of peers who had happy families turned into childish sadness after death. They were just sad and could not look like humans. At most, they could only have a physical form, and they did not have the memory, appearance, or support of the deceased. It's just that energy. Once that energy disappears, they will become what they are, and of course they won't be able to hurt others." The king's father asked, "Then how can we get rid of that anger? Sprinkle chicken blood? Sprinkle glutinous rice?" He licked his lips and asked Ji Chang's urgently, "Do you need a mahogany sword or a talisman or something? Tell me, I will buy it for you immediately if you need anything." Ji Chang's glanced at him disapprovingly, but still looked gentle and gentle. "This is not feudal superstition, nor is it a ghost in folklore. It is all based on science. Of course, it must be treated with scientific methods. Parents, science. When catching a ghost, do you still need to pay attention to science? Yes, think about it, these children are all teenagers, right? Teenagers, what are they most afraid of?" The parents shook their heads in confusion. Ji Chang's knocked on the book in his father's hand. "What a question! Question. Nowadays, which student is not afraid of doing exams and studying for class? Come on, each of you has a book and read directly from it." Huh? Oh, okay. Although it's a bit nonsense, Yuki Nagasawa said it so seriously, and it seemed to make a little more sense. 4 parents stood 2 beside each hospital bed. They opened the books in their hands, opened a page and began to read seriously. Find the extreme value of the following function. In the first year of Jianyuan, when the emperor first came to the throne, he recruited virtuous and literary people. Essay correction, my little. The little devils who were laughing and joking were stunned. They were stunned for a while and hurriedly covered their ears crazily to try not to listen anymore. It's no use, they don't have ears at all. The 4 parents also worked hard for their children. The words were correct, the pronunciation was standard, and they were serious, Jiligulu jiligulu, jiligulu jiligulu. The little devils went crazy. The pressure of studying was like a heavy mountain. They were so tortured that they began to claw off their own skin in pain, and screamed loudly. Ji Changs nodded while watching their reactions and recorded them carefully. After seeing several parents chanting for a while, although the black energy in the little devils' bodies had dissipated a lot in pain, he came up with another idea. They are jealous of your family relationship. Quickly, show it to them properly. The parents put down the books one by one with instructions, but looked at each other and didn't know what to do. It was Wang's father who reacted first, strode up to his son, pursed his lips and gave his son a loud kiss. Dad loves you the most. You are the crystallization of my parents' love. Ah! The kid closest to the hospital bed was so jealous that his eyes fell out of his head. His body was deformed and he was still roaring angrily. His sharp teeth fell out like rain. Wang Zhengjiao on the bed woke up a little and shouted in surprise, "Dad, it's reacting. It's reacting." Wang's father was overjoyed and felt energetic. "My dear son, you are the most precious thing to Daddy. All the money Daddy makes will be spent on you. Tomorrow I will learn your favorite dish, and I will cook it for you every day." The Queen Mother followed, "Yes, yes, we will buy you the new pair of sneakers you want right away. As long as my precious son likes them, even Mother Moon can buy them for you." Father Han and Mother Han also started to show their motherly and fatherly love together. "Mom loves you so much. She saved all your New Year's money for you and didn't spend a penny. When you went to school, we missed you so much that we couldn't sleep. You are the most important thing in my parents' hearts, the most important thing. Brats, ah." They roared and danced around jealously, but it didn't help. None of the four parents could see them, but they were all focused on their children. So they became even more jealous. Ji Chang stood up, his expression full of majesty and solemnity as a teacher. He sneered and announced to these brats coldly and ruthlessly, "You guys, all of you failed. You copied the wrong questions 20 times. Indifferent, ruthless, like a judgment machine without emotion. Ah!" This blow was like the last straw for the little devils. They were unwilling and resentful, but they could only scream and disappear slowly when they were overstruck. When everything calmed down, there were 8 more lemons on the ground. Ji Changs knelt down and picked up the lemons. It turns out that the inner essence of these children's sorrows is lemons. No wonder they are so sour. Everyone knows I'm a good man. Author, Tan Zhong Mao. Chapter 120. Lemon, Lemon Essence. The four parents of the little devils could not see them before, but they could clearly see the lemons that suddenly appeared on the ground. They stood in front of their children with vigilance and fear on their faces. Not lemonade, just what they are. Ji Changs put these lemons together and looked at them carefully. He had to say that they looked really good, with bright color and smooth skin. They looked delicious at first glance, but when he thought of their smelly appearance before, Ji Chang suddenly lost his appetite. Seeing that these lemons didn't seem to have any lethality, Wang's father boldly approached them cautiously. "Aren't they just childish things? Why have they turned into lemons?" Speaking of this, Ji Changs perked up and had something to say. "This is just their state after death. Because they died in our world, their death state will be close to their essence. Father Wang, their essence is lemons." "We can't say that. We can only say that their essence is close to lemons in the human world." Ji Changs picked up a lemon and showed it to him. "Humans see everything through their eyes. In our eyes, this is a lemon. But maybe if you switch to other animals with stronger acuity, they will look different. Father Wang, then what we see is correct, or what other animals see is correct. There is no right or wrong, every creature has a different perspective." Ji Changs packed up the lemons one by one, stood up and said, "They provoked this. Logically speaking, they should go to the world of Tong Sui to solve it themselves. Even if I solve these tong sui, the matter is not over yet. The two parents who originally thought the matter was over were suddenly shocked. What? Isn't it over yet? Ji Chang's was very confident, otherwise, why didn't I help them solve it before? They have been to another dimension. Even if Tong Chuan dies, there will still be other things coming to the door. The two children turned pale. The parents were also extremely anxious and quickly asked, "Where have you been?" The torture they endured during this period and Ji Chang's intimidation made the two children dare not hide anything, and tremblingly told them where they provoked these children. They had heard before that there was a haunted house near the school. It was said that someone had died in it. The person lived alone and had no relatives or friends. He died there for several months and his body was discovered after it had rotted into a state of disgrace. Because people had died in the house, and the death was so miserable, no one was willing to buy it. Some homeless people used that place as a resting place, and they would make beds on the floor in 2s and 3s at night. It used to be fine, but from one day onwards, those homeless people started going crazy one after another. Crazy. Ji Chang's took out his notebook again and asked, "Why are you so crazy?" Han Chiao's face was full of fear. What he once heard as a story seemed to have become a memory that he wanted to forget after he met Tong Xuan. Everyone is crazy in a different way, but they will only repeat one action and say the same sentence. We have seen one of the crazy people, so we were curious to see what it was. After entering, nothing happened. We went home thinking it was nothing, and then the next day, those things appeared. If the action is the same. Ji Chang's touched his chin and had some speculation in his heart. "I'm afraid you are entering a haunted house." Hearing these two words already makes people's hair stand on end. Han Chiao stammered and repeated, "Yin house, does it mean the place where ghosts live?" "Roughly the same." Ji Chang's tore off 2 pages and showed them to them. He lifted the page on the left, "Make a place, this is the dimension we live in." Lifting the right side again, "This is the dimension where those things live." After speaking, he put the 2 pieces of paper face to face without superimposing. It seems that the dimensions of the two are the same, but in fact they cannot touch each other at all. Our planet has gone through so much, and there are countless dead creatures. If I must say, there are many more inhabitants in their dimension than there are in our dimension. The king's father seemed to understand, but he still agreed, "What I'm saying is that I don't know how many people have died throughout the ages. If these people can really become ghosts, the dimension that Teacher Ji mentioned will definitely be overcrowded. Not only that, there are other animals too." The royal father was stunned. "Don't only humans have souls?" "Who said that? It's all life." "How come only humans have souls?" "It must be that not only humans can go to that dimension after death. Dinosaurs, elephants, and even fish, as long as they are alive, they can produce energy bodies after death. So in fact their dimensions are very crowded, but fortunately, except for people, those animals have no obsession with maintaining a certain shape. Most of them are just streaks of black light, so that dimension is actually composed of black. It is not dark and dawn in our dimension, but is black light is everywhere, above, below, left, and right. Some black lights will slowly dissipate when they feel boring. The place is crowded, and most animals don't care. Some humans who still have memories of their lives are not happy, so they will find a way to return to their previous residence. Such situations are relatively rare. After all, not every human being is satisfied. I found the coordinates of my lifetime residence in the world of black light. Ji Chang superimposed the 2 pieces of paper together. When they are found and live in it, it will be the haunted house. Because it lives with its former owner, in terms of belonging, it belongs to both our dimension and the ghost dimension. If someone goes in, they will probably be pulled into the dimension of the owner of the underworld house. This house belongs to it, and it has absolute control over it. Humans can't do anything about it. As for what you said, it was fine before, but then those people suddenly crazy. I speculated that when nothing happened, the owner of the house was still looking for coordinates in another dimension. Think about it, if it were you who arrived in a strange place and found your way home after all the hard work, only to find that your home had been taken over by some strangers, how would you feel? Will be very angry? These homeless people are naturally used to vent their anger. The two students turned pale when they heard this. Then will we also be used to vent our anger? Ji Chang squinted at the two of them for a few seconds. The situation is different. You didn't want to live in that house. You just walked around and left. If the owner of the Yin mansion doesn't take action against you, it means that it is not the kind to kill anyone on sight. Or it may be because you are young, and humans who have just died are generally more tolerant of younger creatures. But if that's the case, why do Jiao Jiao and the others get into trouble? Mother Han asked urgently. Ji Chang's, that's what the Yin house is like. Since people from our dimension can enter, things from other dimensions can naturally enter. If the owner of the house doesn't take action, it doesn't mean that the things living in that dimension are not interested in Han Jiao and the others. You know, for them, Han Jiao and Wang Zhengjiao are their tourist visas now. If you want to come here, you have to pass through their bodies. If you don't have any malicious intentions, just take the visa and leave. It's hard to say if you have bad intentions. In other words, Han Jiao and Wang Zhengjiao were completely exposed in another dimension, and anyone could come to them. Both of their faces turned green. This time, it was only 8 children who could torture them to this point. If it were changed to the entire dimension. Teacher G, please save us. Please, Teacher G, I will never dare to secretly play with my phone in your class again. Ji Chang's, oh, it turns out you used to play with your mobile phone in my class before. I thought you just ate snacks and read novels and fell asleep. 2 people. In the end, Ji Chang's agreed to take them to the owner of the Yin mansion to intercede and let him close the door to another dimension. Mainly, he was also curious about how the owner of the house made those homeless people crazy. This Yin mansion was even more luxurious than Ji Chang's had imagined. It was a small villa with overgrown weeds outside. It was broad daylight and there was not much sunlight shining on it. It was so eerie that it fit the name of the Yin mansion. Wang Zhengjiao and Han Jiao hid behind him timidly. Teacher Ji, do we want to go in too? Of course, I am also your teacher after all. Of course I will bring you here for such educational things. Wang Zhengjiao and Han Jiao, educational significance. What educational significance can there be in visiting a place where ghosts live? Ji Chang's, you'll know when you go in. By the way, be polite when you go in, and speak politely. Don't let others think that the students I brought out are rude. The two of them nodded like crazy chickens pecking at rice. Ji Chang's opened the door, faced the empty scene inside, and asked in a polite and consultative manner, "Hello, excuse me, could you please help me close the door on my student?" There was no movement in the room. Han Jiao asked tremblingly, "Teacher, is it not at home?" Ji Chang's turned to him and smiled gently, "You'll know after you try it." After saying that, he picked up the chair on the ground and split it in half with his bare hands. 2 students. As soon as the chair was broken, the closed windows suddenly shook violently, and strong winds from nowhere blew in, making the 2 students unable to open their eyes. Ji Chang's was not afraid of the wind, but he also knew that he had angered the owner of the ghost house by smashing the chair just now, so he cooperated and closed his eyes, intending to see what it wanted to do. The wind stopped after blowing for a while, and the 3 of them slowly opened their eyes. As soon as they opened their eyes for a second, Han Jiao and Wang Zhengjiao were so frightened that they fell to the ground and stared at everything in front of them with dumbfounded eyes. This is thousands of troops. Kill. In just an instant, this place turned into a battlefield, with soldiers wearing armor and holding weapons fighting bloody battles. They also discovered 3 people who were incompatible with each other, and both parties were stunned. What's going on? Who is this? Fancy clothes, there must be something fishy, kill. After saying that, both sides came towards them with weapons raised to fight. The 2 students screamed in fear and fled, but Ji Chang stood there without any fear on his face. He was even in the mood to find fault. The soldiers on the left are dressed in Tang dynasty clothes, and the soldiers on the right are dressed in Qin dynasty clothes. How could these 2 dynasties be at war 800 years apart? It's fake. The soldiers stood still for a moment and disappeared in an instant. There was another strong wind, and the 3 of them closed their eyes again. When they opened their eyes again, they were surrounded by cries for help. Looking down, they were already in the sea. Next to them was a large ship that was slowly becoming silent, and all around them were people with ferocious faces. The crocodile is now opening its bloody mouth towards the people in the sea. The 2 students screamed in fright again and struggled desperately in the water. Ji Chang still looked calm. The alligator, a freshwater creature, how can it appear in the sea? It's fake. The crocodiles paused and disappeared again. Then, the wind started to blow again, and then the scene changed again. But no matter what the scene is, Ji Changs can always find something wrong. Cows are color blind. Don't tell me you gave us red cloth. Even if you dye us all red, it won't be able to rush over so manically. It's fake. Have you only seen foreign zombie movies? How could the zombies in our country all look like foreigners? They are fake. This is a ball python. It can only be 2.2 meters long at its maximum. You are taller than a building. Do you think its genes are just for decoration? That's fake. 10 minutes later, the wind finally stopped blowing. A man with a pale face and black-rimmed glasses who looked like a normal middle-aged man stood on the 2nd floor and angrily cursed at them downstairs. You idiot! You know nothing. I am stand up. Stand up, you know. If you have the ability, don't just beep. Oh. Ji Changs remained calm. I won't go up, I'll just beep. The middle-aged man was so angry that he was trembling all over. You are so stubborn and you still want my help? Go home and play with the cat stick. I won't help these 2 children, get out of here. Ji Changs, you really don't want to help. The middle-aged male ghost sneered, I won't help. Okay, you forced me to do this. Ji Changs also sneered, I didn't want to use such a cruel method to deal with you. If you insist on toasting and not eating, then I will not be polite. The 2 students, who had been tortured by their previous fantasies, were shocked when they heard this. Teacher Ji, is the fight finally about to begin? Are they going to witness various spell fights? Ji Changs took out a small book, took a deep breath, and spoke under the vigilant gaze of the middle-aged male ghost. The author must be a primary school student. What kind of stuff is he writing about? The middle-aged male ghost's expression changed. No more reading. Ji Changs continued. The water injection is so obvious that you can't feel the tight rhythm of the plot at all. The author should practice hard. I really don't know why articles like this can appear on the good list. Is the author just a scumbag? Haha, what kind of bullshit did you write? Negative points. I seem to have read this plot somewhere. You must have copied it. The middle-aged man's ghostly voice became shrill. I humming told you to stop reading. Ji Changs raised his eyes and glanced at him, and saw that his body was getting more and more swollen, gradually turning from the size of a normal person into a ball. He lowered his head and continued to read as if nothing had happened. I really don't understand why such an ugly article has so many comments. The author is too conceited. He won't let you talk about his bad writing. What's wrong with not buying your article? Isn't it just for people to read it? Haha, rubbish. The middle-aged male ghost was so angry that he turned into a huge ball. Ji Chang saw that it was almost done, so he put it away when he was satisfied, and put away the small notebook. I have found out clearly that your occupation is a novel author. If you don't help, believe it or not, I can read it to these readers' negative comments. 3 days and 3 nights. Middle-aged male ghost, ah, you devil. It expanded, and continued to expand. With a bang, it exploded in front of the 3 people. The wind was strong and dust was everywhere. They could only hear it talking super loudly. You don't understand our author's strong yet fragile heart. Even if I die, I will stick to my ideas. Go. The wind stopped, and Ji Chang saw clearly where the middle-aged male ghost had been. Standing there was a pigeon with white hair and glasses. The pigeon flapped its wings angrily, flew over, and scolded him, "Coo coo coo coo. Coo coo coo." Ji Chang stretched out his hand and caught it in his palm. As expected, it is very fragile, and the negative score has returned to its true nature. He turned around and said to the 2 students who were stunned, "Did you see it? Knowledge is power. Look, didn't the teacher use knowledge to convince it to help?"